Oh, it was.
What are you looking for, Addison?
He,
I'll
Yeah,
make it
get a
his
vote.
dinner.
he had a boat here. And so he just came to work on his boat and lost track of time and wasn't.
All right, I'm just gonna get started. This is warm. It's May evening, and we all wanna get out. So I'm gonna call this meeting to order, Wednesday, May 20th, 2026. And I'll just add that unlike our typical evening, we're missing one.
No, we can't, or I can't hear you back here from the projection.
Okay, so we have our full, tonight we are missing one select board member, Erhard Brochoff, who's not gonna be with us tonight. So everybody else who's planning to attend is here and we do have a quorum. So the first item on the agenda, and if anybody wants an agenda, there's some on the corner of the table there, is public comments for items not on the agenda for discussion but not action. Does anybody have any public comments from the public? Okay. So next is town reports, and so in our packet, there was a town administrator report. And so we're not gonna go through that in detail, but Lisa, I'll let you highlight what's important. And if the public, first of the board and then the public has any questions, we can.
All right, so I'm not gonna read everything, but there were a few things in there. Shabig is actively working, in conjunction with Long Island. Well, Shabig is trying to connect with Long Island through GP cog, facilitated a meeting for us. So we can get together for a meeting to try to figure out how we can best pull together our resources and maybe share some services in the future. Board of Adjustment and Appealings has a hearing coming up, Planning Board has a hearing coming up. Any information for those hearings is on the town website. The town recently submitted for a grant, hopefully we'll hear in the near future to supplement the funding that's needed for South Shore Drive. And there are some, if you haven't noticed, the work going on Cousins Island, work will continue through July, so plan accordingly. And then there are some dates for some upcoming meetings through June that are also on the town website, and then we do keep updating them as they become available. So that's everything in a nutshell for the TA report. Does everyone have any questions?
The board have any questions on the town administrator report? Thank you. And I just would add that the Board of Appeals hearings are for 2 parking lots, so their town is the applicant, or BEI is the applicant on behalf of the town, but those are for moving the parking at the Hook and also on Jenks Road. And so they go through the Board of Appeals because that's the process for those particular sites. Any questions on the town administrator's report from the public? Can you hear me all right now?
Not very well, but
Do you want to move on?
why don't we,
I'll try to talk a little bit loud, yeah. All right, so next on the agenda is, and we really didn't have any departmental reports this trip, right? Okay.
No.
So next on the agenda is 2640, and so we're down to regular business, and we're gonna introduce Addison Davis, our AmeriCorps GB Cog Fellow, and hear an update on the projects that he's been working on. And Addison, if you don't mind, I know you put a little bio in the packet, but if you could just give a brief synopsis of sort of what your background is and kind of how you got here.
Yeah. I will refer back to the packet so I can know what I said. So my name is Addison. I'm the GB Cog Resilience Fellow. This is the 3rd year that the town has had a fellow in this position. It is a term that runs from January to December, so I'll be around for the rest of the year. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. I'm not a Maine local. From the other opposite corner of the country, pretty much. I came to Bowdoin for college and have stuck around. Yeah.
Can I ask one question, because
Sure.
why did you apply for the fellows program?
So I am interested in environmental planning in general, and at the municipal level more specifically. I previously worked for the town of Brunswick while I was at Bowdoin, and this is a good program to get more experience in that space and work on a variety of different types of projects. If I've been working for a much larger city, I would have probably been working on one very little narrow thing, and as you will see, I'm working on many different things. So.
Can I just interrupt? Can you hear Addison okay?
yeah.
I can swivel. Very cool.
He projects well.
So things I've been working on, I'll go through all the projects, and then the most in-depth overview will be on the energy analysis I've been doing, which is sort of the reason for this presentation. So the primary thing has been working on the community wildfire protection plan that the town has a community action grant to complete with the town of Long Island. And so that plan is coming along. There will be a meeting with the fire chiefs of both islands on June 2nd, and then field work will happen on June 3rd, and probably ongoing beyond that. But it is on schedule. The plan will be finalized by late September. There is an opportunity that was just posted on the town website for free brush chipping for people who do brush clearing around their property.
What would you say what the opportunity is?
Good call. The chipper will be on the island on June 15th, which is Monday. But we need to sort of organize all the people who are doing it and get them, make sure there are enough people to make it worthwhile. There's a form.
Who's providing service?
This is from the Maine Forest Service. And they provide this for all the towns that are doing the community wildfire protection plan.
And where will the chipper be?
They're gonna bring it around the island to each property that's participating. And chip stuff, and then you can keep the wood chips or they can remove them if you
So
don't
it'll
want.
be done on your own property.
Yeah. And there are more details about that on the town website and on street.org.
And how many participants do we need to have?
We need to have at least 12, but no more than 20, so we
Okay.
gotta shoot them in.
How many do you have right now?
0.
Yeah.
We posted this yesterday, so. So, yeah, tell their friends. And then, and fill out, if you're interested in that, fill out the form that is posted online and turn it into the town clerk. That'll help us have the consistent count of all of the people.
Is there a deadline for applying for that?
I would say as soon as possible, because it'll be first come, first served if we do have a ton of interest and go over the limit. But the day itself is a couple weeks away, so we'll keep it a little bit of time.
And I think if you're not there, you could leave your pile of brush and they'll chip it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you have to be present, I don't think.
Yeah, you don't have to be. There's a spot on the form where you tell them where the brush will be and what you want it done with it. That's wildfire. There's also a sand dune outreach grant, which is a state grant to do some outreach on regulations in the shoreline zone and vegetation, native species, and habitat related to sand dunes. So we were planning those events for late June or late July, date TBD. There will also be some signage and development for Jenks Road and Chandler's Cove as part of that grant. So that's in progress. And that, yeah. That is sort of a part of the process of shoreline zoning ordinance changes that are on the way. And then I've also been helping support some of the infrastructure projects, South Shore Drive and Stone Wharf. As Vika mentioned, we applied for the grant for South Shore Drive. And I'm also working on a story map, which is a sort of online GIS presentation, showing a sort of map island-wide of where all the infrastructure projects are in the upcoming years and where they all stand. Lots of details about each project. So that is finishing up and should be live and ready to view at people's convenience in the next week or so.
Great.
Yeah, it will be reviewed by all the authorities. And yeah, and then I've also been supporting the climate action team and occasionally other town committees, finance committee, coastal waters, as part of my role. Any questions on those?
Nice, thank you for so much of what you're doing. Is the storyboard map going to also be reviewed by someone at the Historical Society?
It's
Probably not, because it's current infrastructure projects.
Just current stuff?
So it's really, so if people wanna know where are we at on Stone Pier, where are we at on South Shore
Good
Drive,
idea.
financially and kind of schedule.
Yeah.
So it's more of a, it's just a different way to present the information, but it's
Yeah.
pretty cut and dry. It's not, but I think Addison will make it interesting with it.
my degree was in history. This is not historical. This is not historical work.
Thank you.
And Addison, before you move on to the energy project, maybe you could explain, June 13th.
June 13th. So I'll get back to June 15th.
Okay,
Yeah, that'll be the end. So, yeah, so, last year, the resilience fellow in my position, whose name was Ellie, undertook a variety of energy projects. One was a residential program organizing collective purchasing for residents to get heat pumps, energy audits, or insulation. All this you all know. And the other was municipal facilities upgrade to the town office / public safety building and the school to get heat pumps. There's also a repair done of the heating system in the town office for the existing system. And so those municipal facilities projects, after the grants and rebates, was about $95,000, which fully set heat, electric heat for the two buildings. And so one might ask, what has been the outcome of that? Are we saving money? What has the, is it working? Who, are there cost concerns? And so I looked at a ton of data. This is why I have my computer, because there are a lot of numbers involved here, and I don't want to just sort of hand wave at the numbers, but actually get them right. So I looked at all of the fuel delivery bills to the two town buildings for the last 3 years, and also all the monthly electricity bills, which includes both the electricity that the town gets from the solar array and the electricity that comes from CMP. And I looked at all this usage and calculated the cost difference in this year compared to past years. And so the big headline is that essentially costs at the school are flat, and costs at the public safety building are down about $3,500 compared to the previous 2 years. And that is not what was expected of the heat pumps. And the efficiency of heat pumps compared to heating oil is supposed to be much better than that, and they're supposed to pay themselves off. And given about $3,500 in savings between the two buildings, it's going to take a long time to pay off the $95,000 investment into that, essentially. Question.
What should have been that number?
It's hard to know. I talked to Ellie a bit about this. They can't calculate it exactly. Efficiency Maine does have a sort of estimate of what the cost efficiency of oil is for heat pumps. And heat pumps, given island prices for oil and the price we pay for electricity from the solar array, they should be about a third of the price of oil. And this is off of the $20,000 that's spent at these two facilities. So it should have been 10,000 plus, essentially. And I will note that the baseline here is only 2 years. And the 2026 data is actually from April 2025 to April 2026. So it's not yet been a full year's worth of data. And obviously this was a cold winter. So there are a lot of caveats here. But that said, there are some clear issues that were identified. One is that the school used as much oil as it did last year, despite the fact that it has a new electric heating system. This was also corroborated by the fact that the boiler room at the school is really hot, because the boiler was essentially running in parallel to the heat pumps, which it's not supposed to do. And
Why was that?
Yeah, why was that?
so good questions. These are all the questions I've been asking. So the boiler was left on because it heats the vestibules of the building, which were deemed to not need to be, they didn't need heat pumps essentially, and they were just going to stay on oil heat. But since they're on the ends of the building, for the boiler to be on and sending heat through the whole building to heat those small spaces, it's also heating the whole building on the boiler isn't meant to be run at such a low level, essentially.
In other words, you couldn't differentiate between the ends of the building and the center of the building?
So it's not sending heat into the classrooms, but there's still enough heat moving through the system that it's leaking out. Like it can't get all the heat from the boiler room to the vestibules without heating the spaces along the way. Those pipes are insulated. It was down compared to 2 years ago, but there shouldn't have been really much of any. It's like heating oil use at the town office was down 80%. Which basically the boiler exists to run if it's really cold out, and heat pumps, do their job. So that was an issue. The superintendent turned off the boiler in March. Unfortunately, after they had gotten one oil delivery at that much higher prices. So because of that, oil costs were actually higher than last year, which is unfortunate. With that sort of major issue in mind, if the boiler's being shut off next year for the whole winter, maybe turned on in the depths of cold, if it is a really cold winter again, that could be another $2,000 worth of saving, which is more in line with what was expected from the investment in heat pumps. And then at the public safety building is an older building, is not very energy efficient. One major reason for that is the apparatus room. When the doors open, all the heat goes out, and heat pumps aren't really well suited to heat that space back up. So that building used a ton of energy before, and it used a ton of energy this year, and in the form of electricity instead of oil, essentially. The consequence of that was it pushed thus far the town has, all of its electricity needs have been covered by the solar array, which is about 50% of the CMP price. And because the electricity use is so increased because of the public safety building, it's called exceedance. So there's been significant exceedance in January, February, March of this year, where we have to pay the higher rate. And the numbers I said earlier about, which building is, well, I'll get into this later. I'm gonna skim over that. Essentially, costs were down, but not as much as they could be. Emissions were way down. So from a carbon emission perspective, it's great. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done to remedy the operation of these buildings. I also just calculated that had the oil deliveries been at the same times they were last year at the same amounts, with the elevated prices from the war, that would have been another $1,000 to $2,000 over baseline. That was good. The residential program was also successful. There were 14 energy audits done, 10 buildings had heat pumps installed, and 3 residences got insulation. For those residences that switched from heat pumps, they switched away from using oil and kerosene. So that is another sort of cost benefit. It was overall a successful program, I would say. The energy audit guy in particular was great. Great feedback about him. The heat pump contractor that was used was much harder to work with, and less well suited to island work. So any re-upping of this program, probably go with the same energy audit guy and a different heat pump installation guy, essentially. All right, any questions on the analysis before I dive into my short recommendations? I've already sort of been hinting at. Okay, so this goes back to what I was saying. First recommendation is reallocating the net energy billing credits. The way we currently do it is that we get net energy billing credits from the solar array. They get assigned first to the town office, then to all the other town facilities, public works mainly, and then to the school last. And so when they run out, the school bill is the highest. And so it doesn't really matter who gets them. It's the same cost to the town either way. But it makes it look like the school bills are way up. The school's getting like $1,200 electricity bills, where before they would be getting $50 electricity bills, because they're seeing all of the exceedance that the town is getting overall. And so mostly to make it easier on the budgeting side and not sort of double charge them, because when the bookkeeper splits up the solar plant bill, he splits it up evenly among the town departments by usage. But then the school is the only one who's paying for the CMP electricity. So essentially, we can switch it to a percentage system, which means each building receives the credits according to their actual usage, and it will more accurately reflect in the budget what their usage is like. Why this is a useful thing, I think, is that in the future, it might look like the town's, or it might look like the school's electricity use was like double this year. And it was actually up only about 25%. Whereas the fire departments, which is where the public safety building is, their electricity usage was about double, but their bills were up about 25%. So it will help to not have to do this whole analysis, and you'll just be able to see in the budget a metric of how much each building is using. So that's a no cost saved, but better transparency recommendation. I would also recommend continuing home energy programs. I'm skipping around a little bit, not going in order. It was good savings for residents. I think it's in the report, but for people who got energy audits after all the incentives and the discount that the guy provided because he was doing bulk work, it was a little over half of what the original quote would have been. And that's half of the mainland price, which he would have charged more if he was just doing a single home on the island. So the collective purchasing program was a good call. It is labor intensive and basically required months of work on Ellie's part. So as incentives fluctuate and as future resilience fellows are available, or if I have a ton of time available in the fall, that could be another thing to consider doing again. There are some sort of technological fixes and other technological investments that could save more energy costs. I already mentioned the sort of fixes with the oil boiler in the school. And the main thing here is there needs to be a plan for leaving it off most of the time. If we can figure out if that's going to be an issue, what time it needs to be turned on, if it is problematic to leave it off for the whole winter. I'm kind of just punting on this question. Basically make a plan to operate it at the minimal level in the future without just leaving it on and then overheating the building. Similar deal with the heat pumps in the apparatus room. I think they're already turned down at almost as low as they can go. But because of the efficiencies of heat pumps, if there's a period of time where we know the doors are going to be opened frequently, change the way they're operated, basically turn the heat pumps off during that time. So the oil heat can take over, which can be more efficient from a cost perspective, depending on the price of oil. And then finally, hot water heaters across the board. Basically any hot water heater that needs to be replaced should be replaced with a heat pump water heater. Efficiency Maine has incentives right now that make it so it would pay itself off within a year or two. And that is a more constrained system where you can predict the payback better than the larger sort of HVAC pumps. So any heat pumps any water heaters that need to be replaced should be replaced with heat pump water heaters, and any oil water heaters that are in place should be replaced ASAP, basically, because of the cost of oil.
In this last year's program, how many of the residences replaced their water heaters with heat pump water heaters?
I didn't track this. I do think there were 8 permits filed for new heat pump water heaters in the fall, which I think is part of this program. And that was before the current efficiency main incentive. But there's a new one that cuts the price of a heat pump water heater by about half.
So there's a new incentive.
Yeah, they just got a grant to run a new incentive for.
So would you be promoting that again this year?
Yeah.
So do any public, municipal or school facilities have a heat pump hot water heater, or are they all non-heat pump hot
The
water?
school is a traditional electric water heater, which is
Right.
about 3.5 times more energy intensive than heat pump. But pretty good still, compared to oil. And then, I'm not sure about the town office.
Yeah, so it has hot water, but it probably, I don't know how it's heated, do you use
I
it
assume it's traditional electric,
like an electric hot water?
um, but yeah, and then Public Works, I think, has hot water as well. They use waste oil to run it, so that doesn't need to be replaced. And then insulation is really the thing that should have been done before heat pumps, unfortunately. In the public safety building has probably inadequate insulation, so looking into the future to doing energy audits and replacing insulation before investing in new heat technology is probably, that's what efficiency main recommends, for future efficiency work. Yeah, and then
Addison, am I correct that when you're referring to the public safety building, is that including the town office all the time?
yeah, so
So
the
that
whole
data
building is the public safety
Right.
building. There are 9 heat pumps throughout the whole building.
Right,
5 of them are on the fire department side. And those are the large heat pumps, like 24,000 BTUs. And the 4 that are on the town office side are smaller.
but I believe the public safety end of the building is just cinder block and
Yeah,
completely uninsulated.
yeah, that is true.
So it's really good heat conductors,
And
more than anything.
yeah, and the other thing, and this is. Actually, this isn't in the air mentioned, but with discussions of new public safety building, there are ways to move heat pumps. So.
But we wouldn't be moving them because if there is a new public
It would be
safety
an
building,
expansion,
it's just additional bays.
right,
And that doesn't address the issue of the lack of efficiency
right,
and insulation in that building. Okay.
but depending on how you change the use of it, you might not need maybe 5 large heat pumps in that building anymore.
So
Depending on,
we would.
yeah, future operation.
So those are sized on some kind of square footage basis by the contractor.
They're sized in terms of square footage and insulation. So the public safety building is actually about the same size as the school. The school does more
Square
heat
footage.
pumps, but the town office uses more electricity. Because it's less efficient with building.
So if there's a better way to manage the use of those heat pumps with turning them off and on, that would be a good plan to be able to outline so that people using that building would know what to do.
Right.
Okay,
So the recommendation, I think, in the report is to make a plan for the operation of the heat pumps with the fire department and the select. So.
thank you.
And so then my 2 sort of major recommendations, the increased usage has pushed us into this CMP market rate electricity, which wouldn't be as much of an issue if CMP rates weren't also growing much faster than what we pay for solar. So this currently CMP rate is about 23 cents per kilowatt hour, and the solar rate is 14 cents per kilowatt hour. Since a greater and greater percentage of our electricity will be coming from the market rate, and it potentially poses a future large cost premium. There are a lot of considerations to any sort of expanded solar. It's too complicated to just say, yeah, do solar on the school, or do another solar array. But if we had been paying the solar power purchase agreement rate this year instead of the market rate on just the first quarter of the year, January through March, it would have been $5,600 in savings. So actually that's not the right number. 2025, after 6 months of heat pumps, we had $5,600 in savings from market rate electricity. So
Wow.
with any new town facilities will increase usage by a lot. The current buildings usage will only increase and the rates will only increase. And it will make more and more sense to look into expanding solar. There's a lot of legislative uncertainty here. Recent legislative changes mean that the town can't subscribe to 2 solar arrays that they don't own. So one of the two, so if there was going to be an additional solar array, it would have to be behind the meter and owned by the town, or the town would have to buy out the current solar array, which we decided not to do. So future legislative changes could also, you know, throw that into clouds as well. There's also a risk of new rooftop solar, given that it is a potential thing down the line if you have to replace the roof. Can be very expensive. Usage is pretty unclear, and rates are pretty unclear. So I was talking to Steve Hinchman, and he said that Revision is currently modeling about a range of 3% rate increases per year to 15% rate increases per year. So, and the last 2 years have both been 15% on average. So there's a wide range of future scenarios, and in the sort of high usage, high rate scenario, the town would be saving potentially $50,000 a year on the electricity 10 years from now by paying a solar power purchase agreement rate. But in low usage and low rate scenario, then it wouldn't be as big of a deal. And since this would be capital investment or a bond, or potentially a grant supported capital investment, it is something that requires a lot of consideration. So that's solar. And then the other recommendation, which is the last one on the list, is to make a comprehensive energy plan, either as a standalone plan or as part of the comprehensive plan update that is going on. And there are other towns that have done this sort of as like a light version of a climate action plan. Wyndham and Scarborough both did it in the late 2010s. But I think in this case, it goes beyond just like the climate and emissions perspective, and also into just sort of the general economic development picture for the town. Because of the island tax, because of the increased cost of fuel and gasoline and heating oil and all these things. And the fact that the town is connected to the grid and gets the electricity at, or, you know, whatever the market rate is, in terms of improving cost competitiveness with the mainland. Increased electrification is a path to do that. However, as we've seen, it requires a lot of planning. There's a lot of considerations. The sequence of things, like having an installation upgrade before installing the heat pumps, and having continuity. So you don't have to talk to Steve Hinchman every time you need a question on solar. Having a more comprehensive plan, an idea of how sort of each sector could do electrification and what the town could do to support that, I think could be a really good thing. It also could inform the upcoming capital projects, so more parking if there's going to be any EV charging infrastructure needs there, and the new public safety building, modeling what the impact on usage is. And so as a sort of part of this idea, I have scheduled a June 13th event here, which is Saturday morning, to sort of have an open forum for people to talk about energy issues, talk about concerns about electrification, concerns about the cost of oil. I feel like energy is the topic on everyone's mind. There's so many different things this could touch, from like EV charging access, both on the island and on the mainland, the potential for batteries and reliability and what that could mean, ways to use more wood on the island to do heating locally, all these things that just sort of looking for more community input on and offering a chance for people, just curious what people think about. So that is also coming up in a few weeks. And I will now take questions, but that was a lot of information. I would encourage you to read the report. For the official numbers.
Thank you.
So any questions from the board?
My big takeaway from all of your information is just simply how complicated it becomes quickly.
Yeah.
To take a look at how many factors weigh in. And
Yes,
that gives a lot of food for thought.
and I think the utility bills are sort of just like a standard thing that comes in, and it's like they don't have a lot of control over what that number is gonna be every month. But with the fluctuation in costs and the changing of fuel types, I think it's worth more scrutiny going forwards, just to make sure everything is as it's supposed to be. And that, I mean, the two sort of operational things I identified with the school oil, I mean, that already, they probably would have turned it off if I hadn't said anything. But that is the type of thing that you just need to keep an eye on as energy becomes a larger and larger cost to the town.
When the energy audits were being done, did that include the public safety building?
No,
And I was just gonna ask that question. I'm not sure why we didn't do that. I think it's because we've targeted residential properties. But I'm wondering what you think about doing an energy. So the school had an energy audit when shortly before the renovation was done. And it was pretty comprehensive because they looked at kind of the different heating options there. And at that time, did not recommend heat pumps. It was interesting. So it was evaluated as part of the original energy audit that Claire, whatever her name did, she's very capable. But I'm not aware that the public safety buildings ever had an energy audit. And while we're talking about it, I've been in the public safety or the town office. And it was cold in there for at least in your office this winter in some areas. It was not particularly comfortable. And I would say kudos to the town office because they did just run the heat pumps, as far as I know, right?
We did, I think the town office, they do distribute them a little bit better, cause the space is smaller. My office, the heat pump pushes it right past my office, and so we got a fan to try to push some heat in. Because, the issue in my office is with the renovation, they installed basically wall to wall baseboards. So when the heat is on, I'm dying in there, and when the heat is off, it's freezing in there. But once we got the little fan, it pushes it in, so it's manageable. But I think on the town office side, with the exception of my office, which it's one or the other, it does seem to work a little bit better than the rest of the building.
But the area where the two clerks work, that's the floor of a garage. Is that even insulated? That must be.
I don't think that is,
Yeah.
and that's the area where you have the heat pump right next to the
Yeah.
door, and so that door is constantly opening and closing, and so it doesn't hold, we need an entryway.
Right.
And then an entryway into the building to keep that heat in, cause every time that door opens, it just comes right out.
Right.
And that's,
Yeah.
the school did build those into the
Yeah.
renovation, and I think it might be even worth. Even though, hopefully we won't be there forever, I think it might be worth considering for the comfort of the people. Particularly the clerks, right in the front door, because every time you open the door, poof.
Yeah, the clerk has a little heated pad in her rod that she keeps her feet on in the winter time, because that air is cold.
Well, and that
Right.
floor is cold, yeah.
Yeah, so I think, I think there's also the balance of not wanting to put too much money into the public
Right.
safety building, so trying to operate a boat. I think what I heard you say is, in some cases, it might be worth running the oil heat rather than the heat pumps, particularly if you've had the doors open and then you've got to bring it back up to some temperature.
Right,
It's
but-
just that heat pumps can only put out so many BTUs at once. And if they're heating something up from the outside temperature, then that, let's call it
Take-
lift,
yeah.
is very great, and they become basically as efficient as like an electric space heater in trying to do that. And they're very good at keeping things at a constant temperature, is the idea, which is not the use case of the public safety building.
And what is the ambient, what is the temperature set at in the?
I believe they were set at 55 during the winter.
Okay, so it's pretty low.
Yeah, it was pretty low. Initially I was saying, I don't know, it should be set lower, but I don't think that's really the only solution.
We need those plastic vinyl things that you drive through like in the freezers.
And then from the power walk.
I mean,
Drive through, yeah.
um,
Anyway.
and I will say
it's worth
on the
considering.
energy audit thing, they do. With the sizing of the system, they knew about the lack of insulation and
Right.
the heating needs is, like, the system is correctly sized for the building as it is. What an energy audit would have done would be to say, you should get insulation and not heat pumps. Or you should get insulation now, and in a couple of years, you should get heat pumps.
Right.
Like, the energy audit is not just looking at all the insulation and heating needs, but also sort of being able to rank them and prioritize them.
Right.
Yeah.
But also to be clear, even with, if there is a public safety building across the road, those 3 bays will
Those
still
three
need to
bays
be
still be
maintained.
used and needed.
With possibly 3 vehicles instead of the 5 that are in the 3 bays now.
And this was caveat, a cold winter. Which.
Yeah.
Makes things a lot worse.
Yeah.
So,
There you go.
winters will not be as cold
But
as moving forward, unfortunately.
Any more questions from the board? So I think, any question from the public?
Now, Addison, this is full of valuable operating and policy information. Is this the first time that you share this? And
Yes.
Right.
The board hears that first. I mean, I've been having these discussions with Carol and with the superintendent of the school. As on an ongoing basis throughout the winter. Or since I started doing this in February. But yeah, it is useful, and I think, I mean, we were talking that like Town of Long Island doesn't do any, they don't have any idea of what their energy use are, but they don't have the energy inventory or the investments in this side of things, so I think and their resilience, they have a person like me. And she's sort of embarking on that, but it does take a lot of time and analysis, and I have a giant spreadsheet on my computer with all this data, and yeah, it's not a straightforward question to answer of how can the town best save money on the energy system they currently have and the energy system they could.
it is extremely valuable. And what you have found so far. Were you figuring this out on your own, or did you have a charge from the town?
I was told to evaluate the effect of the heat pumps from last year.
And you've done a lot.
That was.
We asked,
of them.
to be honest, I had no idea that it was gonna be as comprehensive an analysis, but it was really, I think because we had somebody here who had one thing was Addison has an interest in energy, and so
That's
He was
the
curious.
thing.
I would say he was a little curious himself, and also, it kind of dawned on me that we made that decision, I was on the board, we kind of just did it. And it was an opportunity, we thought we were gonna save a lot of money, so we just kind of made the decision to do it, and it wasn't even in the capital plan, and so it was kind of on us to sort of say, yeah, what was that? Was that a good idea? And I think it's given me a lot of food for thought in terms of where we go from here. And,
Absolutely.
I think it's, I feel very committed to making sure new construction really takes it into account, especially. And, I think, it will be interesting to see if we can improve, like in the upcoming year, particularly the school who was, I would say, not fully aware of kind of how their system was operating. So I think they're getting educated in the process. So I think, but I do think it's a big cost for the town that we don't always kind of clue into in the long run.
And this is like a general theme of heat pump adoption is, in theory, it is as cost efficient as natural gas. And more cost efficient than if you have the access to like
Right.
cheap electricity, but. That's only if you're operating it in the way they're supposed to be operated.
And many people, residential use as well as.
Yeah.
Institutional use, really don't know how to operate them,
Yes.
and they're flying in the dark. I think it's extraordinarily valuable, and so the question is, how do you, we're only, there's one family here. How do you pull this together? Target it where it can be useful and make it more known. So it's not just on your spreadsheet.
That's the next step.
That's the next step,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so this was really Addison's report to the board and what its findings are, and then I think we're open to suggestions about where to go from here. I think that the June 13th meeting is to try to solicit some interest from the public about what areas they're, what aspects of energy they're interested in. And so I think maybe after that meeting, maybe we'll have some idea. I think it's very technical. Addison's report's very readable. I don't know if maybe there's a way to make a 2-page infographic that can sort of summarize that information.
There are a lot of charts that didn't make it into the report.
Yeah, so there's a lot of information. I thought it was well done considering the complexity,
We
but,
haven't seen it, but.
and then
It's in the,
it's in the packet. And so, and then have you sent that report to the school committee? Or have you yet?
I was waiting for it to check.
Yeah, so I think he'll share it with the school committee too, and they may be interested in
Yeah,
kind of. And frankly, it's, it will have to be coordinated with people who, we don't really have facilities people like some communities do in our public buildings. And so even Long Island has a facilities person. But, so I think it's gonna require us to kind of carry it forward about how to improve the efficiency. So, but it was nice to have an opportunity to have someone do that analysis, and we just would not have been able to do it without
Yeah, absolutely.
a fellow, yeah.
I just have a suggestion, something to think about. So it sounds like maybe we need to work with the school to reallocate the percentage, which
Yeah.
would help on the school side. The other big impact is the public safety building. I think Carol's suggestions of maybe doing an analysis is a good first step. The facilities committee, when they were formed to really focus on 2 tasks. That was to look at the town office and the fire safety, look at 5 short-term and long-term needs. They did that initially. It's been about 3 years. I think maybe the needs have slightly shifted, and so possibly, suggestion is for the board to move forward at some point to doing an energy audit to determine what those needs are, and then tasking the facilities committee to revisit what the current needs of that entire building is. One of the things that they had done was look at what the future of that building could look like when the fire department somewhere many years down the road does move out. And a design for a town office was done. Could it be reconfigured in a way where something like a little bump out is done as a short term, a fix for the next 10 years? Where that contributes to some energy efficiency. But that might be something to put onto the facilities committee in the near future to look at with this new information. With the lack of the pumps really working and the apparatus are doing what they need and using so much. Could that building be relooked at to see how it could be recommended? Because that is one of their tasks, is within 5 years, what is the immediate need? And this sounds like it might fall right there.
Well, and as you say that, I think you're the liaison to the facilities committee. It might be a good idea for Addison to make his presentation to this facilities committee.
And especially since one of the things we've talked about, the facilities committee is taking a look at if a structure is built across the road, which will give additional bays, what are the operating expenses there? And so looking at what our current operating expenses are, they're actually less because of the solar panels. And so all of that needs to be folded in. And I believe, if any alterations are made to the current fire station, it means that the whole building has to be upgraded to that high standard of essential structures, which is why we're looking at separate bays. So I don't know that there could be a bump out.
Yes, to some extent, it's when the facilities committee first looked at expanding the fire department in the current location.
Correct.
There is no room, so we would have had to go out and go up. And
Right,
the cost of 2 levels and having ADA accessible, elevators on Shabig was outside of the Shabig scope. And yes, some major work and reconstruction. A simple bump out that's not going inside might be different, because you're not doing anything internally like renovating a bathroom where you have to bring it up to code. You're kind of just doing an external bump out. That
We
would be
can look
kind of in it, which that might be a little bit different, but.
we can
something
look
to
into
think
that,
about.
but I think that was discussed at one point. And it would have that ripple effect. But anyway, what it does bring is that I think this is an issue the facilities committee could really take a look at, especially if there's looking at any additional structures. That type of project should include something perhaps insulating the present building. So that could be a part of the same project, and being able to look at all of those energy needs. I look forward to hearing hearing this again at the facilities.
So I think, Addison, you can work with Eliza to get on the agenda for the
On the
facility.
docket.
On the docket for the facilities.
And for the school board.
Yeah,
Yeah, but that'll come next.
that's coming.
Yeah,
And advertise well the 13th.
So I think there's a notice in the calendar that will come out, and then also, I think you're gonna send out a postcard.
Yeah.
So,
Good.
and I think you'll have food, right? Food and coffee. So,
I said, I said big foods.
thank you.
Yeah, right.
Great.
mostly I just love how much you detail, I want to say geek out because that's what I like to do with listening to what you have, but well done.
I will
Yes.
say Andrew also appreciated the detail.
Yeah.
For nothing else, this has been helpful for Andrew, like bookkeeping wise.
Yeah,
He's a spreadsheet guy.
Yeah, it's he liked my spreadsheet.
Well done, thank you.
yeah, good
Yeah,
job.
thank
And I think, if you didn't realize, in the packet is, Addison's report. And, maybe we
Make
could
sure to-
even put it up sort of separately on the facilities committee or something, so people can look at it. Yeah,
Can I talk about the fire?
you can ask about fire ponds.
Any progress on the fire ponds?
It's in the outline for the community wildfire protection plan.
It's in the what?
It's in the outline.
And so the other thing about fire ponds also is we may wanna have access agreements, I think, cause that's become
An issue,
an issue,
right,
which
I know that.
used to be very casual.
What
but-
fire pond are we talking?
Well, there's four fire ponds, all right,
There's 5.
5. So it's just the maintenance, cleaning and, use of the
Accessibility.
fire ponds. And that is part of the wildfire plan, and even, I would assume they're gonna look at, are they sufficient geographically, volumetrically, whatever.
There's some great maps.
Yeah.
Made up about this. And for both Shabig and Long, this was like. Not the first time that the fire ponds have actually been mapped, but the first time they've been mapped in a digital way and not just on a hand-drawn map. So
And have they ever been cleaned?
that's part of.
I think some of them have been, I think it's probably developing a regular maintenance plan is gonna be part of it, I would guess, I don't know.
Which hopefully we have more capacity for now. And we have a fire hydrant on Shabby. Because we have one fire pond, which is elevated, and there's a pipe that goes to a fire hydrant.
Yeah.
And
With actual
it's a little known trivia here, but there's a fire hydrant. Okay, thank you. That's one of my things I lose sleep over.
Is that a secret? Where is it located?
Oh, it's right in front of Gennaro's house.
Okay, so I think we'll move on to, so thank
Thank
you,
you very
Ashley, I
much,
think that was great, and just keep track of the time if you're gonna make the
Very
vote.
valuable.
So next we're gonna hear something similar, we're gonna move on to hear an update from Loren, who is our Island Institute fellow. And she's gonna give us first, I think, an update on the comprehensive plan and the shore access work that she's been doing.
Yes, I am going to do that, but in reverse order.
Okay.
So the first project that I worked on in my fellowship was a shoreline access inventory. I really wrapped up creating the inventory, like the map, back in the winter time, and I've been sort of socializing it ever since. I've showed it to a few key people who are really invested in shoreline access in the community and got their feedback. You all have seen the map, and I fear that
I guess,
in the
has,
packet, oh, sorry. go ahead.
has everybody seen the map?
Yeah.
Okay,
So I fear that in the packet, when it was scanned in the QR code, might have gotten a little squished, so if you need a different QR code, I have it here. But I presented the digital map back in November, I believe, to the select board and got some feedback, and that map is mostly unchanged. And there is the GIS map, but then there's also a story map that includes all of the CCLT properties below it, not a shared map, but a different map right below it. It's just labeled the CCLT properties. That was because I received feedback from lots of community members that thought it was a really good idea to have those maps together in a shared place, and I thought that was a good idea as well. I think it would be a really good idea for the map to find a place on the town website at this point, if you are all comfortable with it, but I also have created a few pieces of signage or flyers, if it makes more sense, where it just says, welcome to Shebig, and, for more information about accessing our beaches, please scan the QR code below. That could be put, at the stone wharf when people first get off the boat. I've had Mike McKee from Veteran Taxi asked if we were comfortable with him having it in his taxi. And so yeah, I think at this point, the sort of shoreline access inventory and sort of bare bones, the mapping and documenting where the municipal right of ways are and their current status is complete. And I am sort of at the point now where it's like shoreline access plus, where it's like the things that I've discovered in the path of doing this inventory and how to move forward in that project to make it even more expansive. But I'll get more into that in a little while. Within the packet, there's a full report of the data that was collected from each of the rights of ways. I'm not asking for like an action on this right now. I just wanted you all to have it. The list and the recommendations, I put it essentially in order of what I perceive to be the sort of weight of recommendation. Like what would the work required would probably be the heaviest in my sort of idea. So like the first one is division point, which one of my recommendations is to consider regrading the bluff because the stairs, there's starting to be a bit of a gap between the stairs and the top of the bluff. And I fear that if the bluff continues to get destabilized, the stairs will become detached. So that's scary. And so, I'm not going to read through all of them, but that's just to give you an idea that like, that's sort of the biggest quote unquote recommendation in the sense that it would require the most work. And then as you go on, one of the last ones is probably, Soul Road and Chandler's Cove Beach, because, Soul Road has a lovely sign that I think is great. It's really well maintained. There's a footpath. And I think that it's well accessed. So I encourage you to, review the recommendations. And, maybe in the future, maybe we can consider some of the different recommendations that would require, like money attached to it. Most of them are really about increased signage or consistent signage. And getting clearer about whether or not there is parking and things like that. Let me just make sure if I'm not missing anything. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have for the shoreline access inventory, but
Are we going to be able to speak about shoreline access before going on to the comprehensive plan?
Yeah, I think we
I think
can,
that would be a good.
we can take it topically, so I think does the board, so are you done with?
Yeah.
So does the board have any questions on the shoreline access information that Lauren just covered and she summarized in her memo to us?
I of course do. For some of the recommendations, are those some things that could be done by Public Works? Or is that, I see how much we ask of our Public Works Department. I really want to just give a big shout out, but is any of that potentially jobs that could be covered by Public Works? I don't really need an answer. Because
Yes and no.
because it would be yes and no. Yeah, okay.
I think it depends on the location, depends on the work, and depends on the time of year.
Were you thinking of something specific, like, or?
I guess one of my big concerns is when we have right of ways that need to be cleared.
Yeah,
That's really important because once something is grown in, it gets forgotten. And that's part of what we are, I think, looking forward to what you were going to be able to offer us is to make sure those get maintained. So some of it is clearing and
yeah.
or installing signs, which I know, but yeah.
So one suggestion I would like to make to the board as you consider what Loren has presented and it's kind of circling your mind in terms of what the next steps should be. Keep in mind that we do have a number of these locations are locations that were damaged by the storms and there is FEMA funding. So I know Loren has some recommendations, but the recommendations might not necessarily need to go in that order. They really should be prioritized based on the FEMA funding because the FEMA funding is a requirement for it to be complete within a certain amount of time frame. And if there are specific recommendations that fall in place. And so as you're thinking with what your recommendation should be, I wouldn't necessarily start with that right of way that hasn't been maintained, that's overgrown, that needs to be cleared. That's something, yes, I agree with your comment, but that's something that shouldn't come to the top of the priority. We do have a couple of locations, but frankly, they are town right of ways, they are owned, the town has every right to clear them and maintain them as they please. So if that's an issue with some residents who have seen that it hasn't been maintained previously, that shouldn't be the preventative for the town to start. But I would encourage you to kind of think in terms of focusing on the locations that do have funding connected with them, like Willow Street, Fenderson, Central Landing, and Waldo Point are all locations on this end that were damaged by the storms and have FEMA funding associated. So those might need to be kind of the first ones to prioritize.
And I have a second question. The one thing I had heard is that some of our public access wasn't in the deeds. Is any of that an issue? I remember hearing that some of the properties were granted access, but it wasn't in the actual deeds.
So all of the municipal right of ways that I have mapped, they're either parcels of land that the municipality owns,
Okay.
or there's copies of the deeds within the town office.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that was one comment I had. I think it would be helpful to reference the book and page of the deed for each of the right of ways.
Okay.
So that we, in the future can go to it. We don't need the deed, but there is sort of, sometimes some of these are paper streets and some of these are right of ways and they're slightly different. And so just so that we know which is which. And I guess I would agree with Vika that I think as a select board, what I see our priority, partly because the funding does have a time frame that it's supposed to be used in. I think we need to focus on those 4 locations that have FEMA funding. And in particular, I've already heard from a couple people about Willow Street, which is the road to Hamilton Beach, which is a paper street. Because a lot of people use that access and it's kind of rough right now and a little treacherous. And so I think that one, you know, when I look at all of them, that would be our priority, I would say, just because of the amount the public uses it. And the other thing that I think we should kind of do, at least for Willow and Waldo, but maybe all 4 of them, and maybe East Shore Drive, is to do an actual survey. Because one of the issues is if we're gonna go do some work on these places, we have to know what the boundary, we've had to do it every place. We've done a project, so, and maybe it would be easier to get the survey over here to do kind of all of them, because particularly for Willow Street, we would need a survey before we do anything, because right now, I think people might be parking on private property, similar to Jenks Road, where people were parking on private property. So that could determine how much we can do. And then Waldo Point, because there are projects planned on both sides, I think we need to know what our ownership is there and sort of think through how we're gonna work cooperatively with the 2 stabilization projects while we're maybe trying to maintain access, because they're kind of different. The stabilization projects are trying to prevent erosion and sort of, you know, harden the shoreline, and then we want to have access, which is not fully compatible with the same objective. So I think I would agree, I think focusing primarily on the FEMA sites. And I don't know, Vika, you would know better than I do, for Central Landing and Fenderson, would those also need a survey, do you think, before we do any work?
So for Fenderson, there is a fairly clear description, and I recall there are some markings down there that mark the right of way. It's just kind of a footpath leading. So the extent of the work that I would envision there is really putting some steps in, because you're not going to take actual fill that was lost and replace it, because if you've been down there, there's no going back. With Central Landing, there is some mitigation associated with it, and so that would be an area that would be best suited for a survey, so you can get very precise boundary lines. So when that mitigation, part of the mitigation efforts is to replace the existing culvert one size up to prevent and relocate the runoff that's coming from kind of the past the Gil Martin's house and onto the right of way. And so with work like that, it would be helpful to have more precise location and some engineering recommendation. So when the work is done, it's done right, because once all of this work is done, we have to tell FEMA exactly what we did and provide proof of what and how the work was done. And they will have to acknowledge and approve it. And if we just do whatever we want and it does not meet the standards of what FEMA recommended, we will be given that money back. So to ensure that that doesn't happen, I think taking those extra precautions ahead of time and spending that little money on something like a survey would be wise.
And would the survey be covered by the FEMA grant at all?
So I don't think that survey would be something that would become covered by FEMA.
That
I'm
is
pretty
what that-
certain I'd have to double check. We might already have a survey for East Shore Drive.
Okay.
I think we did East Shore Drive and South Shore Drive simultaneously, yes, that's.
Okay, and when
that's-
surveys are done, we get pins. Have pins can be.
Not always.
Not
always.
always, but the company that we worked with the last couple of surveys, there's been some shift in personnel, and I think, being a little bit more detailed up front and not assuming that it's gonna be done a certain way and really having it and.
Thank you.
And the other thing that we were able to do with Jenks Road is we can superimpose the survey on an aerial photograph. And so you can really, the contractor, for example, can tell where they are. And that's kind of what I'm thinking about, is like, we wanna know where the boundaries are. And you know, not all of them are where activity occurs on the island, you know how it is. And so I think we just don't wanna get crosswise with our neighbors on some of these right of ways, and we wanna, you know, move forward with, particularly with these storm repairs, and I would say, if we can't use the FEMA money for the surveys, then we would probably take it out of the storm damage fund. And it's not a huge chunk of change, and it's more cost effective to do them as a group. So,
The survey for, Bennett's Cove Road and South Shore Drive were each about $4,000 or $5,000. So if you're looking kind of in terms of the size and the scope of work for both of those locations,
Okay,
that's kind of what you're looking for.
thank you.
Probably between $2,000 to $5,000 on
Each
each
location.
location, depending on the depth of it.
Good investment. Okay,
so any other comments from the board? I guess, the only other thing, and I did look at the map, I think my perspective is that it would be perhaps better to have a map that shows the municipal rights of way and access points. And then I would link to the CCLT website, which shows all of their properties. Because it's sort of duplicative to have us do another map, and their maps are very accurate. They've done a lot of the survey work and stuff, so I think in a way, it's sort of complementary to link to their information, and also their website has a lot of information about the specific properties that might be of interest to the public. So that's the way I would approach it, and sort of stick with the town rights of way on our map, and then have, you know, I don't know, either a QR code or we can coordinate with them, but whatever makes sense, either a link or a QR code to the land trust sites, because, you know, I think it's better for each of us to maintain our own mapping. That's kind of how I feel. So that's just my recommendation on how the rest of the board feels about that. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Because if they add sites, then we would have to update our map, and I think it's best, and they, you know, some of their easements are quite specific and foot traffic only, and some aren't, and so I think they're responsible. So I kind of want to leave it in their hands.
Yeah.
That's.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. It's the CCLT map. I didn't make the CCLT map. It's just their map that I have included in
oh,
the story map. I didn't map their sites.
It
I
just
just included-
embeds the live map.
Exactly, yeah, it just embeds there. So if they did update it, it would update on that site.
Okay, well, Chandler's Cove Beach is on that map, and that's not a CCLT site.
What do you,
Chandler's Cove Beach.
yeah. Yeah,
That's
Is-
town owned.
so we have,
there's a piece of it.
Yeah,
that's
part of it.
CCLT though.
Walking path
yeah.
to the beach.
Mhm.
I
But
thought
I
it was
mean,
just the
There
cemetery.
is right adjacent to it.
Right,
The
so there's
CCLT
development,
property, which
Right.
is the old burying ground,
right, developments.
Belvin property.
Right. So anyway,
Mhm.
I think that's a town-owned property, the beach and the upland.
Right.
And there might be a right of way. And then in terms of some of the right of ways, I can just send you, I had some, you know, comments or minor corrections on those, but,
Okay,
yeah, and I guess, maybe make it clear then that it's the CCLT map that you're displaying, just so it's clear, because I think it's, all I'm just saying, in the world of GIS, it's a good idea not to duplicate things, and I guess I thought it was a separate new map, but just say, you know, link to, or, you know, CCLT map. Yeah. Yep, so any questions from the public?
Yeah, I would congratulate you, first of all, on getting these rights of way on map. I was able to look at it, was able to click on it, see the descriptions that were there. I think it's something that the general public should be able to see, that it should not be waiting for that information for the kinds of public works interventions that we're talking about here. I agree with Carol that having the deed book and page references is very important. We are seeing a lot of change
Yeah.
of property on Shebig. And for people to be able, I think it's required of us to make that public so that new buyers, realtors will know that point that you make in your report, that Shebig has more rights of way to the shore, I think, than anywhere else in Casco Bay, and I think probably than much of New England. And that is because people in this community have for a very long time thought that this is extremely important. If there is an add-on piece that might be done here, and you've got your hands full, I can see with other work, that having images from the Historical Society added to some of those locations so that becomes a matter of interest and possibly of pride to see that a place like Central Landing was an enormously busy point. Marine activity, commercial activity, and bearing no resemblance to today. So I would hope that the Historical Society might have an intern, fellow, or someone who would work with that, but getting it out to the public, I think, should not wait.
Yeah.
I've been working with Donna on a project that centers around past and historical uses of the shore. And
Good.
yeah, seeing a picture of like, there used to be a store on Central Landing, like the war, yeah. Very cool.
Horse carriages all lined
Yeah.
up, ready to take passengers.
To take to your point too, or I love that you brought that up, is that these access to shorelines are integral to our community. It is somewhat unusual, and it's to fend off what we see happening in so many places where new people come in and buy shorefront property, but all the access, which is
No longer
not
right.
correct.
Yeah.
It's-
It is essential.
Yeah. it's a-
Yeah, and I think we are seeing more conflicts with access when people have had this historical, maybe not mapped or deeded rights of way, but kind of, you know, areas that they've used for access that we're seeing prohibited access in some of those cases, which is unfortunate. There is a pretty big case right now that we're, in the courts about the intertidal access. So
Mm.
originally it's been struck down. Right now, technically, it's up in the air. But historically, we've had access to, so people own to the low tide line. So, but we've always had access to the intertidal area based on main law, but that's kind of up for grabs right now. So I think it does become even more important.
And it's maintaining that culture that's important, and your work really is a big step forward in that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
When this position was being designed, it really had implications that went generations down the road by preserving access. So just once again saying this makes a massive difference for years, generations to come. Not just
And it would be
years.
nice for everybody to know that that was part of the design, and that's why Lauren is here. It's not just something that you dreamed of.
Yeah.
It was
Very helpful.
past select boards and Vika's input and.
And so, in terms of the map platform right now, is that on the town platform? GIS platform?
No, it's just on GIS. So I have a GIS account with Island Institute,
Okay,
but I can share the map with,
yeah, you
like
could,
with-
Judy
yeah,
could put it on the online GIS.
yeah.
Yeah.
Can I, just so, I guess clarify and make sure we understand the next steps, if that's okay to
Yep,
kind of follow up on that. So I think to speak to what you, had mentioned, Lila, the intent is to make it available to the public.
Good.
It's that I asked Loren, she had, one resident in particular and had some people that wanted to have access to this and be able to distribute it. And I told her not to do that because the first step was for the board to approve it and to make sure they were behind it, because they are the body that, should be able to let me know, go ahead and put it on, and so. If the board is comfortable at this position, at this point. To what is there, and we kind of continue updating and improving it, we are happy to put it on the town website, so it is accessible. To people, obviously with an understanding that. It'll be an ongoing thing, but just to at least have that map and the access point, we could start with that, so. That's to the board's discretion and your comfort level in terms of when you feel it's appropriate to start distributing that as a live document on the town website.
Excellent.
And I guess what I would recommend is that the right of ways be shown with their actual meets and bounds. Right now, they're kind of diagrammatic, so I think only because I can envision some residents getting up in arms about, particularly the neighbors. Perhaps, the others, so I think using the deed, the deeds as the basis for the boundaries and use the actual meets and bounds for those access. One I was thinking of in particular was, I don't know if it wasn't, maybe it was Sunset or maybe it was the one further up, but anyway, I think. Using the deeds to basically define the geometry of the access points would be helpful, so I think. I can help you with that, or Judy can help you with that, and then getting it up onto the town website platform with GIS would make sense.
Good.
So Addison's got access to that too, so he can help you with that.
Excellent.
Aren't you lucky to have all these savvy
They are very sensitive.
people?
Yeah, we are very lucky.
Yeah.
Frankly.
Well, you planned it.
Well,
Not a
I
lot.
will say, yeah, but I mean, I think,
We need it.
yeah, we do need it.
I think the unfortunate situation of how much we have going on has made this place more appealing for people like Loren and Addison. We're lucky, but how we got here, I don't know, maybe.
I will also say, talk to your representatives about AmeriCorps, because
Yeah.
not that they have any control over it, but. My AmeriCorps grant is up, not my personally, I'm done in December, but this program will be up for reinstatement this year, and so it might exist, it might not. And
You
so-
just let us know when we should time those.
Advocacy day.
Well, we felt really, so Addison's boss, Julie Brule, who's been running the program fabulously since it started, and they've had some bumps in the road, like last year when the program shut down. So they've reapplied, they will have to have more fellows than what they have right now, which she's a little concerned about, but I think the big question is, will AmeriCorps exist?
Yeah.
So that's what they're waiting to hear about. So
I
let's
think
hope
it's
it does.
important to recognize the support that the community has made to the entire program in terms of housing and all the activities. It's well supported and well appreciated.
And for the community to know that.
Okay,
Thank you.
so I think we've done
Comprehensive plan.
comprehensive
Yeah,
plan.
yeah.
And Addison, you would need a ride for the boat or what's?
I'm gonna take. the
Okay.
Complete it there.
Yeah.
You're paying attention.
Awesome, okay, so okay. When the town applied for a fellow, the first year was like really drawn out and, I had like a solid work plan, and this is just the way that the fellowship is designed, that the first year is a directive from you all when you apply, and then the second year is something that Vika and I work on together and we design. And so I've been doing my second year work planning for the last month or so, and it kicked off from a site visit that I had with Abby Roche, who is my supervisor at Island Institute, and Vika was also present, where we talked about the work done thus far and like, wins and challenges and all of the things like that nature. And then also started to discuss what the second year would really look like. With the idea that the focus is going to be updating the comprehensive plan. And it was during that conversation that there was some concerns expressed that the scope and the feasibility of getting the comprehensive plan completed in the second year was ambitious. And I was encouraged to take a second look at my initially drafted second year work plan, where I prioritized, of course, like completing the comprehensive plan by August 2027. And so that year two work plan still exists. It's just like plan A, and I just created a plan B. And since then, I've talked to a ton of different people. We also were there. We spoke to Janice from Long Island. I spoke to the fellow that was on Long Island. I have spoken to a few previous and current fellows who also have done comprehensive planning. And, and this is all sort of documented in the report, but basically, it's just, the plan is very ambitious. And with all of that sort of in mind, I created a year two work plan that really just prioritizes the most sort of robust community engagement plan, that realistically by the end of the fellowship, it may be complete. It's like, I think I still think that it's possible. I also know that I have been focused on trying to get this process started since January, and things just move at the pace that they move. And so I also want us to be realistic about any other delays that could possibly happen. And so, yeah, I have to send a year two work plan to Island Institute next month. And so I just want to start a conversation with you all, and Deacon and I have been talking quite a bit about this, about what do we want to have documented? Do we want to have something documented that is ambitious, with the understanding and acknowledgement that it is just that, it is very ambitious, and we'll see how it goes? Do we want to pivot and sort of replan so that it might not be complete by the end, but we have such a very solid report and data around priorities and goals and policies for the comprehensive plan? So I want to have a conversation about what you all think about year two of the fellowship, with all of this context in mind.
So I guess what would be helpful maybe for the board is to understand. I mean, I think I read, so where are we at right now?
Oh, yeah.
And kind of just briefly, and then kind of what the basic steps are in your mind of the development of the plan, so that we can kind of provide some input, because some of us were involved in the old comprehensive plan, but I don't, maybe it's a slightly different process, and I know you were thinking of doing a lot of the writing. And so, which is different than how we did it historically, so how that might work into the schedule.
Sure. So where we are right now, at the start of the new year, because we didn't have a committee yet, I focused on gathering as much data as I could for the baseline chapters, because the comprehensive plan is where you are and where you'd like to be, and the sort of bridge in the middle. And so there's about a little over 70 pages of that complete. No one's seen it, so that doesn't mean that those are the 70 pages that will be in the comprehensive plan. It's just the things that I've been able to gather from the state website. The town did a really great marine resources inventory a couple of years back. That was a really great foundation for the marine resources chapter of the comprehensive plan. The housing chapter is pretty good right now. I did quite a bit of research about the local market trends for both land and housing sales for the last 15 years, and I've created some nice visuals to document like what that's looked like. I've talked to some folks at Sika, and I've attended some housing committee meetings as well. And so yeah, I've focused a lot of my time on trying to create those baseline chapters, and then in March, April, when the committee was starting to be structured, started the process of sort of thinking about what that committee charge was going to be, and also what those meetings, or at least the first meeting was going to look like. And so we had our first meeting on May 7th, where we really talked about like group norms and reviewed the first comprehensive plan sort of community engagement tool, which is a community survey. The committee has been really timely, thanks Richard, in getting me feedback on the comprehensive plan survey, which has been great. And so we're in a good spot right now. We've had one meeting. And so from then to your point, Carol, my hope is to have all of the feedback from the survey by tomorrow from all of the members. I think I've heard from all but one, which is pretty good. So hopefully I'll hear from them tomorrow. And then from there, I'll integrate all of the feedback and upload it to the town's account on SurveyMonkey and get that out as soon as possible. I know that we also have the wildfire community survey out too, so I don't know if there's pros and cons on waiting until that's all at the same time. I'm open to hearing that, but from there, I would like the survey to be live for 6 weeks. After that, I would analyze the data. That's something that I'm very comfortable with, because I've done it for my research in graduate school. And so, analyzing that survey could take a few weeks, a month or so. I'd like to present the sort of preliminary results and themes and priorities to the committee before holding a sort of visioning session with the community. And kind of, review the findings from the survey, sort of reflect back what I heard and understood from the survey, and hear how that perception is or isn't correct in whatever way makes sense. Throughout that same sort of process, I'd also like to engage with the Shebig Island School, with the library. I've got to get those teenagers. I don't know where they are. I'll find them. And from the visioning, from the visioning session, that sort of initial community meeting, I can integrate what I hear in that meeting into the sort of vision and goals, and then have another community meeting where we can present the vision and draft goals. It's basically you listen and you go back and you go back and you do that over and over again until you have a product that is representative of what you've heard. And I would like to also start soon having either focus groups or individual interviews with folks that are identified as whether they're experts or they have big ideas, or I haven't gone to a facilities meeting. I haven't gone to a finance committee meeting yet. So I want to hop around all the different committees and hear from them about what their priorities are within their committees. And from sort of there, spending time socializing the goals and policy through additional community engagement, whether that's, there's packets at the library that you can thumb through in person. They'll obviously be also on the town website. People can meet with me, and so from there, that will sort of take us to next year, next spring, where you have to have, the public presentation on the comprehensive plan before you send it to the state for consistency findings. So yeah, it's a lot, but you know,
So just so from kind of a high altitude view, there's sort of background information that you've done a lot of already. Then the next step is the survey, and is there a particular focus of the survey? Is it to get people's feedback on like what they see the future should be, or is it, you know, what is the survey for, you know? What's the purpose of the survey?
yeah, so, I wish I had it with me. I can send it to you, but I can also get it just now. It starts with sort of some basic demographic information around like, do you reside here year-round or seasonally? If you do reside here seasonally, how long do you stay here when you're here? How long have you been coming if you have been seasonally coming? Like how long have you and your family been coming? And then gets into how well you think the municipality is responding to your needs, and that's the basic Likert scale from like very satisfied to not very satisfied. And then there's a sort of list of check boxes where you can check off as many as you'd like, where it's like, what do you see as the priorities that the municipality can take in the next 10 years? And I think it's a pretty comprehensive list. Maybe you can agree with me.
Kind of read a couple examples.
Oh, yeah, actually, that would be great.
Yeah, so one of the questions that you were just talking about is which strategies are the highest priority for you to improve your quality of life on Shabig over the next 10 to 15 years?
Yeah.
Planning to protect and conserve water supply from the aquifer, protecting and managing open space and natural resources, preserving access to the network, to the working waterfront, develop ways to expand the number of fire and rescue, building resilience in our capacity to cope with climate change, financial planning to ensure a stable tax rate, expanding health and. That's only about a third of the options. So building new community service, encouraging more mutual aid opportunities, ensuring that much of life on Shabig remains the same, which
Yeah.
Whatever.
when has it ever been the same? So that's just some of them, attracting new year-round families, building new or updated public infrastructure, update the town zoning ordinance. So all of the above.
So basically it is sort of, you know, background demographics and then kind of what's the community, individuals' priorities, and then
Mhm.
looking at how
Yeah.
that pans out.
And then, yeah, and then there's a couple of open-ended questions where it'll be like a comment box, which is like, what do you like, what do you like the most about living on Shabig? What do you like the least? What is your like biggest hope for?
What aspects of Shabig's island current way of life are most important to you?
Yeah.
What, if anything, could town government do to improve what you like the least about life on Shabig?
Interesting.
What's your greatest hope for Shabig's future?
It's big vision questions. So yeah,
17 questions.
and I mean, obviously I designed it so that, this isn't quite.
But
that
you've
way,
received
I-
a lot of feedback from the.
Oh, yeah.
community.
Mhm.
So it,
Yeah, but in terms of time to take the survey, because one of my most important things about surveys is that they should not take a long time. It takes less than 15 minutes to take
Yeah.
it. It's like about 11 minutes, so.
And so you're gonna deploy that, online
Mhm.
and so people will do that and then you'll get the results. And from those results, you're probably gonna come out with some kind of high priority item, you know, what the
Mhm.
characteristics of the community are. And then does that inform the visioning session? So the
Mhm.
visioning session, just so the board understands, some of us have done it, but just so we all understand, in terms of the next step after the survey, the visioning session is sort of a community conversation, right?
Mhm. Yeah, it's very much one of those meetings where like the big Post-it notes are on
Yeah.
the walls and I present on, what I learned when I analyzed the survey and we talk through those priorities or probably be like, Post-it notes where people can like add their perspectives on all of the different sort of, questions that might be posed. And yeah, so the visioning session would be informed by the results of the survey. Where people can,
And is that a one-time big workshop that people attend and, you know, is that how you typically do it?
I would like for that to be, so I would like for that to be one sort of
Event.
big event. And for that event, hopefully I can recruit somebody to like take good notes with me or for me. Because I would like to, you know, obviously I'm going to be probably facilitating and trying to hop around and
Right.
hear from folks. And I would like the results from that meeting, you know, because I'm going to be interpreting data, which, you know, can be subjective. And so I want to say like, hey, like, this is what the survey says. This is what I think that means. What do you think it means?
Right.
Am I, like, what am I missing when I read this? And allow people to, you know, clarify things or say like, you know, that says this. I think I know what that means. And like, I don't think you do this, you know, I just got here. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And then from there, and the committee's just providing feedback on sort of these different tasks. And then once you get through the visioning session, then what happens? And do I understand correctly that, you know, we have certain chapters, the outline's kind of predictated,
It
right?
is, yeah. We can, I mean, I would definitely recommend, you know, right now the state does not require a climate vulnerability chapter. I think that we should have them. Because you know, I just think it's worthwhile to document it, and I can imagine that that's going to be high on people's minds. But yeah, you know, most comprehensive plans look very similar because of the consistency criteria. And so, you know, I've looked a ton at Long Island just because of the geographic proximity. But also, you know, all different communities in Maine. I've read a lot of comprehensive plans in the last 10 minutes. But yeah, so it's preordained, pretty much. It's just that you have to input your local context and information. And the state, actually, back in the winter, I requested to be added to their sort of data pool where they release their, it's specifically for the historical and archaeological resources chapter and the tree stuff. That they just recently released it, and so Shebig has all that data now, which is great.
Yeah, so they're trying to be kind of the central.
Yeah, and they've made it, I mean. No, I don't think that this is easy, but like I think they've tried to make it as easy as possible in the sense that like you can go to their GIS. Site for comprehensive planning and find so much of like what is required. And they have a checklist that's in the town SharePoint. Eventually I'd like to, you know, go through the criteria checklist that the state has that says whether or not you're consistent with what they require. They offer that to you like within this Excel spreadsheet. And so it's just easy to, like, before you send it, you won't be surprised that, oh yeah, I'm consistent with all of this stuff.
And we did create a folder on the town SharePoint and allowed the group access to it, so any information that's being collected isn't being collected on somebody's personal laptop.
Good.
Like she just received all of the historical data from Beth Howe
Yeah.
that she had
Oh.
collected. Now we have it in our municipal database, so
Hmm.
then that's where it originates and that's where it will live, and it won't be passed down.
That's
you know,
wonderful.
Yeah.
To the neighbor who will eventually bring it to the town office, so.
Yeah. And yeah, to something you had said before that I don't think I touched on, just about the sort of responsibility divvying of writing and the other parts of the plan. I think, you know, when we, you know, Vika, most like us three mostly, and folks from the planning board as well, there was concern about just capacity of volunteers on a committee and whether or not it was going to encourage people to be part of the committee if they knew that they were, if they were going to have to meet every week and commit to writing 3 of the chapters or something like that. I think there was, there was just concerns expressed from folks just about whether or not that was going to mean that no one was going to want to be part of it. And so when we were designing the committee drive or charge rather, it was really primarily focused on providing me with guidance and feedback. Granted, like, I've spoken with a member of the committee recently who was nominated to be chair, and I was transparent in that, like, the chair won't have that much more responsibility, but like we will be talking more likely just by the nature of this work. And so that didn't scare them away. So that was good.
Okay. That did scare them?
No, it didn't.
Okay.
No, it did not. They're still here. They still talk to me.
So I think that's a good synopsis, and I guess what is, you had a plan and, some folks have said that plan's too ambitious. So what's your thinking? I mean, what is it that, so you're really asking us to weigh in on kind of, the approach. And I guess personally, I'd like to hear what you think first.
Okay, yeah, I am someone that has a lot of energy and enthusiasm. Hi, Addison.
Thanks, Addison.
I'm someone that has a lot of energy and enthusiasm, and the part that, the parts of the comprehensive plan that I think will selfishly bring me the most joy have not yet happened, because I am very excited about the survey and the community engagement and things like that. So I think that something that you had said during our conversation with Abby was like, I think it might be beneficial to like take it one step at a time and to just understand that this is ambitious, but like, let's just see how it goes. I think that from my perspective, that feels comfortable so long as, we check in every week. We have a one-on-one where I talk about where I'm at and what I have questions about. And so I know that I'm not going to be doing this alone. I know that I also think that the committee, not to brag, but the committee is pretty good. And they're very engaged, and I think that makes my life a lot easier too. I think for me, because what I don't want is for August 2027 to roll around and for you all to feel like this was like a waste of your time and energy and like, why did we have Brian come here? So that's like my worst year. So I guess with that said, like I would try my darndest. I would try very hard and put obviously all of my effort into completing it. And if it's mostly done, I also like would just, I wouldn't want you to think that was stupid. Why did we do that? So that's like,
So
that's where I'm at.
do I understand you correctly that you think it's still feasible to finish it by this time or August of next year, and we can sort of play it by ear? Is
And
that,
you've made some adjustments, so in the back, there is the graph that has the dates that originally were
Yeah,
there, and then some adjustments.
yeah,
And I think,
and,
so,
and yeah, and I guess the only thing on that for me was there was, the visioning session was, I guess one thing I'm wondering is the community, the summer community
I know, I'd like to
here
move it up.
from June to August, and some people leave mid-August, and I think maybe at least trying to capture the summer community on the visioning part while they're here which I think would be more, instead of September, it might be more like August.
Yeah, I think that that's a good idea. Um. Especially. Yeah, I want to prioritize getting the most. Engagement, and so, yeah, I want to,
And we did one before, when we did the comp plan, I think Rob did it, didn't Rob,
Rob Snyder.
I think it was Rob Snyder who came from the Allen Institute and did it, which was, it was good. And I think the community really does need to think about where we're going.
Yeah,
yeah,
And I think the select board, I think it would be helpful to understand how the select board can support that effort, because as, I don't know about my fellow select board members, but I feel kind of frustrated sometimes, like, you know, I think people just are hoping everything's gonna be taken care of, and I think the community needs to engage on where we're headed from here, because people, some of the people, and I would, it's identical on Long Island, people are getting tired, and if we don't have sort of the next vision of where we're going,
Yeah.
both in terms of capacity, but also kind of what are we headed towards? And it was, this community had a very positive experience going through secession, where the community really came together, we had a common goal. We went to the legislature and we were successful, that helped too. But I mean, we paid a lot of money to become an independent town, but it was a very significant community building exercise, or whatever you wanna call it. And I think we're now at a point where we're really, I mean, my sense is anecdotally, the demographics are changing quite a bit, and the housing situation has
Yeah.
changed. And so, you know, if we wanna get in the driver's seat, we better do it. And so I think, you know, trying to do that sooner rather than later, so that we can kind of, I think that's probably, to me, the most important part of the whole process.
and there, I think too, is where the work that you've been doing, I haven't seen it on the data pulling it together. Key parts of that are going to be important to share.
yeah,
People recognize that there's some major things that have happened since 2007, but people see it from different angles. So some of those trends, that's the key ones, are really important to get out there to, as Carol says, the seasonal community as well as year-round.
And I think one thing that's important to me, I don't know again how the rest of the board feels, is it's always, unlike some islands, the seasonal community and the year-round community have historically been one, and sort of operated, not as a them and us, but kind of together. And I think including, making sure we include them in the visioning portion is, to me, kind of important, because I mean, frankly, they pay 2/3 of the taxes, but it's not a money thing with a lot of us. It's more about kind of, you know, a common goal. And so they, for example, support the school. They'll never send a child to the school, but they support the sustainability of the school. And so those kinds of things. And, you know, it's, there are a lot more people here who haven't really been part of that conversation, and it might be important to kind of, you know, revisit where we're going. And I do think there's a lot of headwinds, and part of the secession, as David knows, was we had someone in the legislature tell us that, you know, you're gonna be a seasonal community in 25 years.
Yes,
he said that when
and it will be a wealthy seasonal community. You are the shortest distance to the jet port. And
So that was
one
sort of,
person who voted against our.
that's right, but that was his prediction, and I would say, I've had other people now that have lived here sort of talk about that. So I think kind of getting that out on the table, kind of like, where are we headed as a community? And if that's not where we want to go, how are we gonna redirect ourselves?
Or are we becoming a retirement community?
Right. And for example, it's really obvious to me in the rec center, because when my kids were little, everything was focused on children in the rec center, and now it's more adult programs during the day. So it's not a criticism, it's just an observation that that's kind of the market. And so I think we also we need kind of an honest look about where we're at, and that's where you can help. So I think over the next 3 months or 4 months, focusing on that part of it, which we can't do ourselves, we kind of do need somebody to navigate that for us, because and people can get pretty opinionated about these things, and I think when we did it before, we spent so much time on data gathering and really not enough time on where are we going. And the data gathering, other than some pretty key items, as Lila said, I don't think it's that important, so.
You're gonna say something?
One of the things that I see as such a big shift is that when the last plan was done, there was so much momentum with
Right.
becoming a town. And now there really is a big shift with volunteer burnout and less capacity all the time. And there is a shift with people, and it's reflected in how you're approaching this, because you're like, if you're on the committee, I'll do the writing and I'll do this. Where more of our community is asking of the town than committing to be a part of making things happen.
Yeah.
So one of the strategic things in having the plan to have you come was to demonstrate, to come up with a really useful tool of a plan, but also taking a look at the fact that our town needs more capacity. We're gonna pull off these things. It does need to be done with more staffing at the town level. What I really like about doing the visioning early enough in the summer is really by mid-August, it's a luge ride downhill.
Yeah.
But to have it happen during enough of the height of the season so that people can participate in a way that says, yes, these are the things we want for our town, and recognizing that it really needs to be done with more capacity. You want these things done? We're going to need some more staffing, because what you're doing and really what Addison is doing, it's easy to overlook, but just knowing that when people are informed about what is being done, those are really valuable to the long range, immediate and long range planning for the town. So making sure in the visioning that is recognized and start teaching the public. I always think a good survey teaches as well as informs with their results, but really engages people in saying, what are you willing to recognize that this will have a tax impact, but you can get more services from our town
Right.
with more capacity. So I think it's setting the stage for that, which I think you're doing beautifully, by the way. And, but I think that having that happen during this summer
Yeah.
is politically a really important time to prepare people for that. So whatever position or whatever needs we need, we can start planning for that over the next year.
So
Yeah.
ideally, when would you suggest?
Like end of July even,
Oh, yeah.
before August.
Okay,
Yeah.
Because I think once, I think like the third week of July to the first week of August, those are just the prime times, getting it on the event calendar. So that other organizations are seeing that these are things happening is really important. So if that was on the event calendar and the town calendar,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
spoken, you know how that works.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get it.
and I think, thinking about how the select board can help the process, and maybe it's by communicating to the committees. You need to participate in this visioning session, we can't make them, but we can, encourage them to show up.
Mhm.
And, just even the date and the time, but I mean, I think making it kind of a town priority for our staff, for our committees, that we're asking you for one day. Or whatever it's gonna be.
But I
Get
think,
together.
yeah, making all of our people who are committees, remember, I did a count once, there were like 144 people on all the committees.
Well,
But
not,
I-
I'm talking just municipal.
I know, right, so anyway, I think making sure that we have that engagement of anybody who's already on a committee,
Mhm.
Right,
be part of it.
And
So-
this, I think, will also really
75.
fuel,
Yeah,
don't, I think it's a great idea. And when I talk about doing it for summer, I don't mean separately for summer, I mean,
Yeah.
bring the
all of
whole
us.
community.
And I mean, I do think there may be other opportunities as we go on
Yep.
for the year-round community to meet in a similar kind of way, but I do think having a major, and it may tell us some things that we're not aware of, like there may be differences in how people, because there were historically, on how people might think about the future, and so really
Mhm.
getting a handle on that, it's important. So I think it's a big undertaking, it could be. So trying to figure out what you need to make that happen, and then picking a date. I think one of my takeaways from tonight between you and Addison's got all these other projects going, is maybe you guys can collaborate and put together a calendar of your events. And even if it's just meetings and other things, but just sort of a 3-month picture of like what you have going on for the summer. As we all know, the summer is like tough. But I think we can help prioritize that in terms of town events. Make sure we don't, if we're gonna do something, maybe we try not to do it till you've got your things done, cause I think we end up competing on town, different projects, sort of unintentionally, because there's just so much happening and someone's having a fun meeting and, well, do I wanna go to the boring meeting or the fun meeting? Well, I
Yeah,
kinda
right.
wanna go to the least
Concert.
concert, right, so.
There's
Anyway,
gonna be food at my meetings.
yeah, I think food is key,
Food works.
Food is always helpful.
and I don't know what the best time to have those, like,
I
we've
know.
done them, I think we did them on. A Saturday, maybe, I don't know,
Yeah, maybe I do, like,
ask
I
the
mean,
committee.
yeah, I know, it's something that I thought of too, like with the survey, like, it's obviously gonna be available digitally, but I'm also going to have some printed
Yeah,
and
that's a good idea.
put places, I'll ask Jeff if I can leave some at the transfer station, at the library, like all kinds of places, but yeah, for the visioning session, yeah, like just to speak to like scheduling, like I don't know if it makes sense to offer one in the evening on a weeknight and one in the morning, not super early, but like one in the morning on a weekend, like just to make sure that, because I wanna accommodate for everyone's work and life schedule, but
That won't
we'll
happen.
get there.
That one.
It won't happen.
But
Yeah.
absolutely, I think having two,
But I
Times.
would encourage you guys, in the next, I'm not joking, in the next couple weeks to try to nail down some dates
Yeah.
and we get them posted because,
Mhm.
then somebody else isn't gonna plan something on that day. So
Yeah.
I think the sooner you guys can nail down, I know Addison's got a couple other, like this regulatory workshop, I don't think he has a date for that, and so you wanna be sure you're not doing them
Overlap.
close to each other.
Yeah,
I think his is during the day on a weekday, so that's not quite as difficult. And I will say, it's not impossible to do a weekday event on the island in the summer because a lot of people I wouldn't say you have to make it a weekend if it's during the day. We get a lot of
Really?
people,
Okay.
yeah. Again, ask the committee.
You
I
make
will.
it exciting.
yeah, I will,
9 a.m.
sorry. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
So that sounds good. I think, so I think what you heard from the board in terms of feedback is really, trying to do the visioning session while the summer
Yeah.
community is here, and Eliza James was saying, end of July,
Cool.
if that works for you.
Yeah,
And then
I
in
mean,
terms of the survey, I will say that the wildfire survey is it's part of the contract, it's kind of
yeah.
required. They keep it up until the thing is, apparently, until the project is complete, which will be sometime the end of the summer or September.
Oh.
So I wouldn't,
No
I would
way.
just do what you wanna do
Okay.
and don't worry about
Sure.
that. I don't think the wildfire group puts too much into the survey part.
Oh, great.
Because they're gonna do some of it, same thing, kind of talking to individual firefighters and that sort of thing.
Okay, so I don't have.
So I would just do whatever works for you and not worry about the wildfire survey. It's not a really important part of the project.
Cool. Okay, that's awesome. Thank you. Why?
And enjoy the summer.
Of course, yeah. Great.
I'm glad to see you go down to see the plovers.
Yeah, I went during, my lunch break today to see if there were babies yet, but there's no babies here.
Coming very soon.
Are there plovers at Sandy Point yet?
No, I've gone there quite a few times, and there's no,
Oh,
not a peep. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Keep it
but
that.
there's two,
Logistically, it's
yeah,
becomes too
there's
complicated.
2 pairs of plovers up the hook, and now we have 4 eggs for the killdeer.
Yeah, that's fun.
Very
yeah,
exciting.
At the
got
hook.
8
At the hook.
Yeah.
plovers and 4
Exciting. And the babies will be here like any day now.
I think that the plovers were wise not to go back to Sandy.
it
That was
sounds
a
that way.
rough ride for them
Yeah.
last year. And the
Yeah.
town was wonderful at responding, and so were the fishermen, but it was a rough ride for them.
But to recall, were there 3 that fledged last year, 3 babies that fledged last year
Where?
at the hook?
No.
How many fledged at the hook last year?
There were more than that,
More, okay.
I think, but the mortality was higher than the year before.
Yeah.
So I think there were 5.
And we had 2 nests last year.
Yes, we had 3, we lost 1.
Hmm.
And down at Sandy, they lost 2 of their chicks.
Right.
No.
Yeah. And that
So
was,
we're doing okay.
there was a high curiosity level at Sandy
Yeah.
Point. That was the other issue. It wasn't really. I mean, people were not trying, but I think it was just a lot of human
Yeah.
activity.
Hanging over
You
the
know what? When those-
enclosure.
Yeah.
when they
Right on top
selected
of it.
Sandy Point, it was a quiet place.
They
It
didn't
seemed
know.
ideal. They didn't know what was coming. But it sounds to me like having 2 solid nests with 4s
So
is good
fun, yeah.
return rate. Anyway,
And there's less beach at both places now,
Mm.
for them, so.
it's encouraging. Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah, of course, like being on.
All right.
Okay, and so any other questions on Loren's work or?
Now, I think it is timely that this, what you're doing, and you've got just the right personality and skills to pull it together. Because otherwise, you probably observed that what we like to do here is go around in circles.
Oh, yeah.
But rather than taking decisions and moving forward, so.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, the Sean.
And you make it fun, so.
I hope it's fun for you.
Yes, that's why it's a big.
Yeah.
fun.
Thank you.
Oh, and so I think we should keep moving along here, so we'll move on to, I see that we have another agenda item, which is Willow Beach. Willow Street Beach access and funding sources for the project, so that's yours.
That's me
So-
again.
Yep,
We're gonna hear from me again.
yep.
So. The packets, the report in the packet starts with. Emma Polimus's, our short quick assessment results for Hamilton Beach. I won't read through it all, but I definitely recommend. You taking a peek at it. It goes through all of the existing sort of site conditions and the characteristics along with. The degree of erosion that's taking place. There's also some good, mapping done with some ecosystem and, sort of tidal and, like environmental characteristics. And then the actual R-shore assessment that just speaks to the, severity of erosion and the slope and upland management and groundwater seepage and things like that. And then it gets into some proposed management actions, because of, all of the sort of existing site characteristics and the ecosystem and the state of the erosion. Emma really recommended. Excuse me, sorry. That this would be a really prime place for a living shoreline. And so, if you continue flipping to the page that has the living shoreline suitability sort of mapping that has the red, orange, yellow, and green mapping on the top. There's a little cross-sectional diagram of the recommended management technique that is basically, you know, a couple of coir logs, some planted dune grasses and other kinds of salt tolerant shrubs and grasses to basically just get the dune and that area back to where it has been. And so that's just the context that I wanted to give to you all, like sort of where this is coming from. Back in November and December, I chatted to Vika about the availability of an Island Institute community climate planning grant. They used to be called Shore Up grants, which I think falls off the tongue a lot easier than what I just said. But essentially, I sort of took a look at a few different things that the monies could be used for at the time. The town was considering utilizing some GP-COG facilitation expertise for a few different communication and conversations with some specific residents. I think at one point, Vika had reached out in regards to that and received a sort of scope of work and tentative cost for that. And so all of that to say, I applied for one of those grants. The total amount is $20,000. That has been awarded. It is, because of the nature of it being an Island Institute grant, quite flexible. And the grant application was flexible in nature and within the application. But basically, the breakdown is that, you know, 5% or sorry, $5,000 can go towards that facilitation services from GP-COG. $5,000 could be utilized for you know, things related to shoreline access. Maybe, you know, you can utilize it for a survey we were just talking about earlier, or benches or historical markers, or just general signage needs, and potentially moving forward with a living shoreline project at Hamilton Beach using the recommendations that are outlined in the aforementioned assessment. And so, yeah, it's flexible, and the breakdown can be shifted according to what we deem or what you all deem appropriate. And I had previously spoke with the I'm forgetting the FEMA representative's name that you all have spoken to quite a bit. But I spoke with him back in March and shared the report with him, Emma's report that I just mentioned, just to get their perspective on whether or not it was consistent with what they would have liked to have seen done with the site, and they confirmed that would be consistent, and that they would only be needed to provided with the final plans to adjust their sort of internal documentation. And so, yeah, I think that, you know, between monies from the grant that I just mentioned and potentially some utilizing some of the FEMA funds, you know, the town has a fun opportunity to move forward with a living shoreline project. So that is, I'll stop there and then I'll talk about the next thing in a second.
And can it be done for 10,000?
So, Emma thinks it can. Okay, and I mean, yeah, that's all I've got.
What I really like about the idea, and you and I have spoken about this, is that from listening to what Emma has to offer, this is a very public way of showing some best practices. I mean, this is a high traffic area that it's a living classroom for how to work with shorelines. So I love that this is the location. Want to thank you for pursuing this. But I think that having everybody know what these core logs are and looking at, this is what the plantings look like. And if we can save that little tuft of hair, that would mean a lot. But it's such a public place that it could really make, I think, an impact in people's sense of how to deal with shoreland erosion in a way that is more sustainable, perhaps.
Yeah, this is great. This is somewhat tangential to this, but, the point of land, between Sandy Point and Johnson Cove, unnamed point. It's the perfect example to me of what we learned about, bluff erosion. It was hit by the storm 2 years ago, and it was gouged out, and then the bluff has now collapsed and created a new toe. And it's right there, you can just see it. Here's the evidence that this is the way the bluff, the life cycle of the
It'll
bluff.
fix itself. It's a
Yeah,
cycle. Yeah.
It's right there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
For those people who never believed it.
Right.
Yeah.
So-
I took a picture.
Seriously.
Good.
You should.
So when would this be able to begin?
So I think that it would make sense to, so the design that's within the packet is, I would describe it as like, I guess preliminary, and so I think that it would make sense to seek support from, I think that this would be too small a project for like GEI or something like that, but some kind of firm that could support us with like a final design, and then could also potentially support with the permitting process, because this is a sand dune, that there's like an additional permitting and regulatory requirements, and then
Oh, okay.
with that, the plantings need to be done at like a certain time of the year, which is like September, October. Or
Can that happen? Is that possible? Is this timeline workable?
I think for this fall, it might be kind of ambitious if it needs a sit, so
Okay.
I think a couple things. One, I noticed when Emma's report, she was under the impression the parking was kind of on town-owned property, and a lot of it is oriented towards managing the parking runoff and stuff. So I think, again, we're sort of back to like, we should do a survey and figure out what's ours and what isn't. And I think we could find ourselves in a similar situation to some of these other sites where we might have to think about what is parking gonna look like, because like the Hook and like Jenks, because we may not have as much space as being used. In other words, we might have to get legitimate about what's part of public parking on public property. On Jenks Road, the property owner was very flexible, but I don't know how people would be here. So that to me would be, let's start with survey. I think the way I see, if I understand Emma's report correctly, she's talking about sort of a vegetative buffer with a little flower log, but sort of a footpath through it. Is that what, so you'd be directing a footpath through it. And I think that does make sense. I don't know that we wanna wait until, and I guess I'd look to Vika on this in terms of, I think this is gonna take some time, and if we have to get a sand dune permit, that could be 6 months. So it might be challenging to hit the fall, so if you don't make the fall, you'd make the spring of 27. Which is to me not a reason not to do it, but I think, I'm thinking maybe we should do some repair between now and, can we do like, I think we can do like storm related repair just to smooth out the access.
Yeah, so we can get the public works to do kind of some basic gravel work where they can just grade the road a little bit. And if there's a need for a small step or something to go down, steps were placed in there, rocks were placed in there as steps after the 2022 storms. And there was some negative feedback about that because it's not wheelchair accessible. In terms of steps, people didn't like that, and so what suggestion was provided is, can you have kind of like a handrail, something like that you can't add because it wasn't there before. So we could do very, very basic, minimal. I think going back to kind of having somebody like an engineering, I think relative to what Lorenz said, and I do think GEI would take it on because they took on the Hook Road where they had to spend basically a year designing 3 parking spots. And redesigning the work that had been done by trying to do the right thing and trying to save some money. And so I think, to Carol's point and to Lorenz's point, to start, I would recommend that the board direct me to get a quote for a survey and then, possibly a quote with GI, or if you wanna go a different direction to get a better understanding how Emma's, suggestions could be implemented. What I would encourage the board to avoid is kind of taking this plan and just moving forward with it, assuming that we could just do it ourselves, because it is
Right.
well written, it is well, stated, but to avoid any future conflict or trying to put something on an area that doesn't belong to the town.
We've kind of learned the hard way that, so I think the steps in these types of things, when we're talking shorefront access, is first, what is ours? You know, we gotta know what's our property, and it wasn't until we had a survey on some of these other properties that we understood that. Then kind of what is our goal in terms of parking? Because that's a kind of a big nut to crack, and
And with something like parking, there was never really established marked parking down there, so we might run into the issue of designing and maintaining parking spaces that were never existed on the map before. And once we start going through the permitting, that's one of the reasons why we pushed back the parking at Jets, because the permitting and the chances of that happening, they don't wanna, just like with the Stone Pier, we can't fill, they're not gonna give us more parking. So with all that in mind, we might have to make it so it's on the side of the road and people have to, but those are all the things that you have to go through the proper permitting, and have those professionals assist us with. And that's kind of why Lorenz here. Do you like this proposal in terms of what the future potential work down there could look like? And if so, what would you like the next steps to be to move forward into implementing something down there?
Yes, so do we do a motion?
So if the board is in the consensus for engineering and or survey, I would recommend that I start getting a quote and bring that to you.
And those would
And
be
then-
2 separate motions, do we do a motion for a
It
survey?
would be two different companies, so eventually you would need 2 separate motions to engage in it. So if you wanna make the motion to make sure that I follow through, you're happy to do that, or I can bring those quotes in front of you and then have you make a motion to determine whether and how you wanna proceed. So you could do it 2 different ways.
so what I would suggest is that we definitely move forward with the survey, and I think on the other locations, so we can make a motion to that effect.
What is the?
I think once we see the survey, that might help us decide what the next step is, because I think if parking is gonna be like a thing, which I bet it
It's
might
going
be.
to, yeah.
I think then that's a time frame that's gonna require discussions with potentially property owner, or we're gonna have to decide how we're gonna deal with that, because it's just like Jenks, there's been historical parking on private property. And so how are we gonna manage that? So I think before we jump to getting a engineering firm, I would first wanna kind of see what we own on the ground. And what do we wanna do? Because one of the missteps we made with the hook is sort of not being clear kind of what we were trying. We went around like, it took 3 years. And so I think the first step is like, what's ours, and then what are we gonna try to make it look like? And part of that can be a nature-based solution on the beach side, but I hate to say it, but I think the parking is gonna be an issue. And so I think that would be the way I would start. I think I would ask Public Works, you know, under Vika's direction to do some minimal repairs just to make access a little. Cause I did have somebody come up to me and say, you know, it's tough for old people, it's kind of dangerous. And, unfortunately, we can't like put like a little boardwalk on there or anything, or a step or a ramp, because it's
We
not.
can't, we had a
No.
ramp, wasn't there, right, but a temporary ramp couldn't be
No,
put in.
not, I don't think so. We can
You
repair.
can't put anything in there that didn't exist
Right.
before. The second you do that, you're
Right.
triggering basically in a violation by doing something that wasn't permitted. So I would,
Okay,
Yeah,
and I think with the town trying to be really proactive in being the role model for doing it right, I would encourage the board to, and the frustrating part is it's time and a process, and it moves at a snail's pace, but to ensure that it's gonna be done right and that you're not gonna have abutters, ultimately what you're trying to avoid is the similar situations that we've historically had with the abutters in Bennett's Cove, where just due to, I think, not taking the proper cautionary steps initially, it's kind of created this controversial tension. And you don't wanna create that for all of the other right of ways that you are in the position of having to improve because these storms are forcing you to. But you wanna do it them the right way, even though doing them the other way would be quicker and you get the results faster. So.
so what I would suggest is we make a motion to have Vika get a quote for a survey, and I think it was for Willow Street, Waldo Point, and Central. And probably from the same group that we've had do it in the past. It's probably easier
I
to
think that might be our only option, really.
Right.
is
And
that the one Haskell?
Owen Haskell, yeah, which is a different, you know, Owen Haskell's retired.
Yeah.
So, and I think we could, Lorraine will be year round, so I think once we get that survey, we can look at kind of what the design kind of conceptually might be, and then we could decide where to go from there. And that might determine the cost in terms of permitting and that kind of thing. So it's not a huge investment to do the survey, that will inform kind of where we go from here. I think this concept makes sense. It's even possible we could just do it ourselves, I mean, with volunteers, and so I think the sand dune grant, you know, is gonna be kind of oriented that way, and it could be like the one they did on Little Diamond was much more extensive than this. I don't know if anybody else saw that, but I mean, this is we're talking 30 feet.
Yeah.
So I think we could potentially just make a plan to do it in the fall and just do it.
Yeah.
So
Is the road 30 feet wide?
33 right now, and
33 foot right away.
and that would be the other thing, the survey will confirm that and that sort of thing, so.
Where it is, okay.
I'll double check just to make sure that we don't have, I'm pretty certain we don't have surveys for all of these things.
Right,
And I'll reach out to Owen Haskell to make sure, because sometimes they have surveys of abutting properties that give us the information that we need. But what I'll do is I'll try to bring forward for next meeting.
Yeah.
Given that the reply from the surveyors is responsive, is a quote for Willow Street, Central Landing, Waldo Point Road, and then I'll verify to make sure that we have one for East Shore Drive.
okay, that makes sense.
Wicked good.
Does that make sense to you, Lauren?
Yeah, that sounds great. And then, I'm sorry,
Do we make a motion?
I'm sorry, yeah.
Do you need a motion on that, Vika?
You can make a motion only if you really wanna make sure that.
No.
It's done.
Well, thank you for getting that done.
I think when we get to spending money, that's when we have to make a motion.
Sounds good. I will try to get this to you for next meeting. Assuming that I'll get the information from the surveyors. I'll email them tomorrow.
Great.
The other grant that I wanted to just bring up and discuss, we were just talking about parking. It is a GP traffic and parking grant. The grant is for their services. Our sort of project manager Her name's Hannah. She is a transportation planner. Yeah, her name's Hannah Hartman. We have met with her once she had designed a scope of work just by way of other previous projects that she had done, and Vika and I took some time to look at the scope of work and thought that it looked good, but that it was really an in-depth sort of report that would have been able to provide traffic and parking information on all of the municipal right of ways to shore. And we just weren't sure that that was going to be as helpful as some other projects might be. And so I wanted to come to you all and offer some potential projects to be considered, and also ask if you all had any other ideas to consider as well, to provide Hannah with a different scope of work so she can support us with a cool project. And so the different possibilities that I and Vika and Carol and I discussed was a study to identify potential pathways for satellite parking on Shebig to accommodate contractors, I think. A traffic and parking study done at the Hook with a focus on increasing safety for drivers and pedestrian at that sort of curve in the road where there's like a blind curve, as we all know. And then a traffic and parking study completed at Bennett's Cove to better understand the frequency and duration of parking, to inform some decision-making and conversations with the Bennett's Cove residents. And so those are just 3 potential projects. If we have other fun ideas, more than happy to consider that.
We've been talking about that.
But yeah, so
So what are the board's thoughts on, let's start with the 3 proposals that are in here. So one is the satellite parking, one is, the Hook. And then, the other is Bennett's Cove.
All 3.
And is it only for the studies of them or for solutions?
So their final sort of deliverable would offer recommendations for, like,
Okay.
It's like planning services,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
Great,
Yeah,
great.
So nothing in place.
Yeah,
but
no
kind of
shovels.
like evaluating
Right.
a problem
yeah.
or something we're interested in. So what do you think, guys?
Well, is it too basic, or, I mean, we sort of know what the problems are here. We need solutions, and it's sort of similar to how we're sort of the amateurs, we need some professionals telling us what should we do. But, so how do we get to that point, so whether we can bring in people that really advise us, give us better information than we've been talking about this. I mean, they're all 3 tough solutions. So would it help, or just, I don't know.
Good point. I think getting the data of what I really want to know, the data on how many vehicles are coming and going out of Bennett's Cove. I want to know how often, what size they are, what's the frequency, and
Okay.
there you go.
Those-
I, Yeah, I can tell when it's high tide because the trucks, big heavy trucks come.
Yeah.
From that end of the island and go back empty. So I think that that's really important information. I'd love to know that. I think having somebody tell us what a good idea for satellite parking is, but I don't know if we need some from GP cog to do that, but
No, and I think it could be,
good heads could put it together.
well, and I think that one. the
But that
way-
time has come.
Yeah.
Right, but I think we can probably only pick one of these.
Yeah, I
items.
should have said that,
You
sorry.
can?
Yeah, so we're really
Yeah,
limiting,
Sorry.
we're picking one of 3.
Yes, one of 3. I just proposed 3 for us to
So we're
discuss
like
and
kids in a
choose.
candy.
Sorry.
It was like, what did we squeeze in a 4? But I remember when we had the thing last summer with the person from
Yeah.
GP cog about the parking. And they talked about being able to put a speed bump or
Yeah.
something at Like that seems like that's pretty easy to do. Can
Well,
you
so
just
that-
slide that one in?
So, yeah, so one thing, when we had the parking thing, and I do think this is something we could, independent of the grant, I think they have speed bumps. These rubber strips that are, kind of, they have a little elevation to them, and a lot of people are concerned about that curve by the hook, and so maybe we could see if we can borrow one or purchase one or
But
whatever.
I just wanna know that people aren't gonna come around too fast, hit the speed bump and go fly. I wanna know that it is a safe
Some
thing
sign.
that will make people slow down, not,
And well, maybe, I
elevate.
think oftentimes they put in two, at least two, and one is prior
Before
to
it,
one
yeah.
that's really critical, so in other words, it slows you down for the next one.
that's why we need experts.
But they would know, and others,
Yeah.
they did offer that at the parking meeting, so Jamie, right, it was Jamie, so we could check and see if that's available. But in terms of sort of planning services by this, experienced transportation planner, is there anything that rises to the top?
Oh, I would absolutely say Bennett's Cove.
Yeah, that's the most
Me too.
difficult.
Okay, so it's universal.
That's been
Do it.
10 years.
Yeah, so Venice Cove, and I think what we're really looking for is to try to quantify the amount of traffic, right?
Yeah.
Size, amount, frequency, time frame.
We don't-
I will say what came up, right, Loren, is that they typically use a video system to do that.
Yeah,
And we have our video policy, but I also think, I'm not,
We publicize it and put it on on someone's front porch, so it's.
Oh, Jackie would probably. love-
right, I mean, I think we have a policy, it doesn't mean we can't revisit it to do a traffic study. Personally, I don't have a hang up. I don't know, Vika, do you think that's gonna cause heartburn?
There's no official policy. You did make a motion that that I wouldn't put anything up without it coming back to you, in a future discussion. I think that in this particular case, and when the conversation came up, I said that right now it's a very sensitive subject, and so it would really need to be pretty detailed and extensive in terms of what and how it would be. And it sounds like there might be some other ways for them to be able to collect the data without having actual video cameras.
Okay,
But my recommendation would be is that we avoid that
if we can.
if we can for the time being, and if not, then we would bring it in full detail to the board to. What I would like to avoid is if that's gonna be the recommendation for that purpose, to make it very clear that it's irrelevant to any other issues, that it's very specific to this, but also not make it seem like we're trying to accomplish one thing by doing something else, so, ideally, I personally would like to avoid cameras at the moment.
But I wanna know how many axles and how heavy the trucks are.
Yeah, so what is the time frame for this?
We need just to position Jeff Westcott down there.
Is it totally necessary to have cameras as opposed to strips that?
I think that's something that we're gonna talk
Yeah.
about with Hannah. There's all different kinds of technologies that they can use to try to measure that data and.
Now, when we did that on Pheasant's Island, I can tell you there's a little old lady out there jumping up and down.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, and Hannah is aware of our.
Yeah.
Preference for, yes. for
Now
not-
that we know your suggestion, we'll move forward
Yeah.
and then we'll bring you any information before any major decisions or things take place.
Yeah.
And Lionel must know, Lionel Plant must know what they bring back and forth.
Of course.
They don't wanna share, have we ever asked them to share?
I've asked, yeah.
Have they
They
done that?
presented us in terms of like the total number of barges in
Yeah.
a year and what they were for town versus non-town. Yeah,
So I think what we have is in the front end, or, they might be at different times, but so there's kind of a community facilitated discussion with Bennett's Cove, and then we're gonna do some data collection.
Yeah, but Vika, if we're getting this information from GP cog traffic study, I think having that information from plant would be important as well. I don't know how much lead time they need or whatever, but if
Yeah.
you, yeah,
If I send him a message, he can probably look 4 to 48 hour notice. It's just numbers and that's
Yeah.
what. Total numbers of barges in the calendar year.
He's not
And
gonna
this is
tell
how
us
many
what-
are
I
in,
know. No.
are municipal.
Yeah,
I mean,
that would be helpful piece of information to put with this.
So, you know, we have regulations at the Stone Pier or at the, you know, at the Cousins. And, you know, at some point, the board might have to look at regulating Bennett's.
Mhm.
And it might be that we start with just reporting what's coming and going. So, I mean, that is a possibility in the long run. I think sort of getting a handle on, you know, what it is. And my guess is, you know, the town, so what portion was the town, do you remember? In
For
terms
barge
of total
rate?
barge trips,
I don't remember.
but it's not insignificant. We have a fair
It's, yes.
trash,
Okay.
road materials,
Yes.
yeah. So I do think that would be one piece of information that would be
Going up.
good from maybe COG is sort of to quantify, because one thing we talked about was, you know, if worst came to worst, sort of at least having municipal access,
Mhm.
yeah. So, and it's, I did put in the, you know, budget information that we're basically kind of on hold right now in terms of where we go with Bennett's Cove. It's not a no, it's just a status quo for the time being. Replacing the culvert is kind of a priority that may help to kind of maintain the access. So we haven't had any real trouble with that this year so far, yeah. Okay.
Real quick, just for context, this was in 2024, the data was provided to me. Well. Last year, so in 2023, Bennett Cove Landing had, this was in 2023, so. I think it was significant with all the construction, it might have been lower, but who knows, 1,294 times. Transported 1,869 vehicles.
How many?
1,869, 146 of those were town of Shabik directly,
Also, not that many.
so. And so this is data from, looks like.
Would that-
Right.
Does that include trash, roll-off containers, or would those, so those, you know what I mean?
That one, because that would be, there's just no other barging.
Right, except for an occasion.
We have maybe a dozen barge trips that's irrelevant to transfer station, it's very minimal, so.
So actually, we're not that much.
But it's gone up. Good.
Wow, so that's, we're like 10%, not even,
You know, it's about 3.
okay. It's kind of like the wood done. Okay, all right, so I think, so you don't need anything else from us right now on that? Okay, so Bennett's Cove is the priority. And if you don't mind asking about the rubber traffic,
Yeah.
whatever they are.
Yeah. well, I
They,
follow.
traffic calm or calming,
Yeah.
is that traffic calming? Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
Which you think we wouldn't need that on Shabbat, but I think we should. All right, so I wanna move on, so we're not here all night, so 2643, to review and authorize.
Thank you, Lorraine.
Thank you, Lorraine.
I think it might be Ryland's.
Yeah, is that your bottle?
No, it's not mine, I'll put it.
Yeah, I think it belongs to.
And someone's backpack. So to review and authorize the town administrator to sign the Cumberland County Sheriff's contract, which was included in the packet. Okay?
Nothing different, nothing unusual, very similar contract as we've always had.
So I would entertain a motion, and then we would have a second, and then we could have a discussion if anybody has any questions, but why don't we start with a motion?
I move that we authorize the town administrator to sign the Cumberland County Sheriff's contract.
Second?
Second.
Second on Richard, so now any discussion or questions about that contract? Okay, all in favor? Great. Moving on to 2644.
Details.
To review and authorize the town administrator to sign the Cumberland County Communications contract. And similarly, this is similar to previous contracts, so again, let's follow the same process, so does anybody wanna make a motion? David?
I move to authorize the town administrator to sign a communications contract.
Second,
Second.
Richard? Any discussion about the contract? Any questions for the town administrator? Okay, all in favor? Okay, last one is 2645, or not next to last, not the most, not the, yeah, anyway. To hear an update and review of the 2026 Shore and Harbor Grant application and authorize the town administrator to expend $10,000 for the required match from the grant matching reserve account. Anything you wanna say, Peter?
No, just for the sake of time, there is information in the packet about what the grant was. It's for Cousins Island work. There is a match requirement contract. You already gave me the authority to sign it and implement it. This has given me authority to, be able to expend the required match. Then once we have that, then we can, move forward. We just received it recently and signed with no issues in it, so, now that that has come through on the state level, we'll be able to start implementing and start moving forward with that, work down there, so.
And my recollection is the contract total is 78, well, it's 68 from the state and then we're matching with 10?
That is correct, and I guess one other thing worth mentioning, is I reached out. So Yarmouth Town Manager Scott unfortunately is leaving. And I reached out to him and he agreed to put Will, their harbor master, as the point of contact. To ensure that there is no, that we don't fall through the cracks through their transition. So then we'll have a good point of contact when we start this process, because we are partners. It's their land. We're the applicant, co-applicant type of a thing, so we need their engagement to move forward with this, so we have that already squared away.
Is any part of this conversation with them gonna be about the idea of retreating from the Blanchard Law
No,
meeting? But find out other
no,
work?
there's no part of that conversation. This is looking at the existing work and determine what the needs are, as well as the parking lot. So anything else outside of those two areas, when it comes to this particular contract, is not part of the discussion.
So, and I think a goal of this is to get an estimate of like what it, thinking about the capital aspect of that facility, kind of what's the ballpark cost we're gonna have to think about, because we haven't really covered that. And then the other thing that I think is quite an advantage is that Department of Transportation, their harbor guy, is gonna participate in the process. So that,
Or DOT.
yeah, so,
Chris Mayer.
Chris Mayo from DOT has agreed to kind of, meet with the committee and participate, which will be big. So I think Pika's got the touch with that guy, so I think it's good because I think having him in the conversation, some of the conversations is gonna be important as we move forward. And CTC will also be a part. So it's gonna be an important exercise.
Good.
And GEI is probably, they were written into the grant, they're gonna do the engineering part of it, but it's kind of a conceptual study, like what are our options? And, the parking lot, there may not be a lot of options. So, all right, so what I need is a motion to authorize the town administrator to expend David?
Move to authorize the town administrator to expend $10,000 for the required match from the grant matching reserve account and to move forward with the 2026 Shore and Harbor Grant application.
Second, Eliza Jane, first to the draw. Any discussion? All in favor? Good.
Good.
Okay, last but definitely not least is to approve the fiscal year 2027 annual town warrant, which we did see at the previous meeting. And Mika provided the final draft to us in the packet. I have one very minuscule
All right, that's here. I meant to bring a copy with me, a blank one, because it's one side.
I mean, it's small, but, on page. I should give you my copy if you want, but.
No, because it says draft on it. I meant to bring like a finalized one, just in case if you did approve it tonight, I could just get your signatures. Instead, you'll need to come into the office. At your convenience for that.
So on page 8, really, this is not a big deal,
How
but,
did you find that?
Article 36.
Page 8.
On page 8, under Article 36, the select board recommends 186.997, but that should be a comma. But, you know, it's one of those things.
Page 8.
Page 8, it's just a typo, a minor typo.
That's the only one. This will be the best town warrant in
Ever.
my time. No, I won't say ever, in my time.
What was it on page 8?
Page 8 was just a minor typo
36.
in the select board recommends
Needs to be
on
a
Article
comma.
36. So minor, we could skip it, but.
Hold the press.
Did anybody else have any other changes or corrections?
What's that? I tried reading it backwards, look for mistakes.
So reading it backwards, that's a good idea. Okay. So is everybody good? Cause I
Yeah.
think if they are, then we need to make a motion to approve this warrant because the next step is for Vika to get it.
Can I approve it? Can I make the motion? Do we need a motion?
Yeah.
Oh,
we
yes,
definitely
because
need a
this
motion.
is your
Yeah, yeah.
This is
motion,
it.
that
Yeah.
this is the
You guys
warrant
ready?
you're bringing
Wait
right now.
for this moment.
Go for it.
Big one.
Take a motion 26-046 to approve the fiscal year 2027 annual town warrant.
Second.
Second was David,
David.
yeah. Any discussion about the town warrant? Okay, all in favor?
Let's go.
Okay. So town meeting, June 6th. Yeah. All right, so I think that's it. And, we do have, oh yeah, I guess we better quickly go through other business. Vika, did you have anything on other business?
I'm just gonna have one thing for other business and communications that I'm gonna share with you. So if you recall, last spring, the select board engaged in a general consultant services with GEI for $15,000, which what that allowed them to do is kind of, rather than general services. So, you know, if you're looking at, directed me to proceed with work down at Jenks Road and having engineering services for that, that was a good example. And so it took them a year to expend through that $15,000. There was a dollar value put in it more intentionally to make it so we didn't, you know, accumulate a lot of money. And so what this is, because they've expended that, they are asking for another one. So this is authorizing me to sign more or less a new general contracted service with GEI, not to exceed $15,000. What this would do is it would authorize me to sign this, but any new projects that would come forward, we would have a contract that I would bring in front of you that you would then authorize me to expend the money from. So this is just going into fiscal year 27, signed in a contract service with GI.
So it's really just continuing. Yeah, good. Go ahead. You got a motion?
No, oh, yes.
I mean, this is under other business, but we need a motion.
Yeah,
We don't need a number.
nope,
Nope.
Just make a motion to, okay, don't make me do it. I'm gonna start stumbling, but to approve up to $15,000 and
nope, no, because you're not authorizing any kind of funding. What you're doing is you're making a motion to authorize the town administrator to sign the general consulting services dated May 14th, 2026 with GEI.
I can say so moved. So moved.
So moved.
Yeah.
All right, second, Second by Richard. So any discussion, everybody understand, it's really just a continuing contract. It was Richard. All in favor? Yeah, I like the so moved technique.
Yeah,
And so, anything else? That was it?
Yes.
So I have one thing to bring up briefly under communications really is that I received an email and I think we also spoke to him from the fire chief. Who, proposed that the fire department has a extraction equipment, what do you call it?
Oh.
Equipment that's used to extract
People
people
from
from vehicles
right.
and we
Just-
have subsequently replaced some of our older equipment, and so we have this unused old equipment. He would like to donate it, or the department, through the fire chief, would like to donate it to, either the town, the department in Saresmont that, responded to the explosion at the sawmill, or one of the other participating departments that might need it.
Oh, they lost some equipment, didn't they?
Yeah, so they lost 3 fire trucks. The fire chief doesn't know if this is a piece of equipment they need. He estimates that it's worth less than $10,000. I didn't get a formal kind of, email or response from him, so I do think that I'm really just trying to get a read tonight that is it okay? I think the board needs to approve an actual kind of formal request.
That is correct, because it's a municipal asset, the select board has the authority to dispose of it how you please, as long as it's valued of $10,000 or less. If it's more, then it has to be done by town meeting. And so this would require a motion, from you, allowing me the authority to move forward with, disposing or getting rid of the equipment.
well, in that case, I would really like to make that motion.
So, and I think what we could do is make a motion contingent on the fact that we get a written request from the department.
Yeah.
And an acknowledgement that its value is less than $10,000.
You would ask for that request.
We would ask, I would respond to the fire chief saying the board is okay with this, but we need an email saying, exactly what it is and that it's valued at less than 10,000, just for the records.
For record, and then you're also thinking in terms of when it comes to an audit and the auditors are looking at everything and they see that, there was no motion on the table and I move forward to dispose a town asset with no authority.
Not good.
Exactly, and so the motion is to create that, record.
Right.
For the future, so then the auditors know that I have the authority from you, that you had authority because it was below that $10,000. And that's the authority that you get from the voters at annual town meeting. So that's kind of the line.
And so what I would do is Ralph emailed me personally as the board chair, I guess, and he had spoken to Vika, but I would respond to him, copy the board and just say, the board's in agreement, but please provide this for the record. And then we would tonight be authorizing Vika to go ahead with that. To be honest, Ralph wasn't 100% certain it's a piece of equipment somebody needs, but he wanted to pursue it, and I'm full in support of that.
Wonderful goodwill gesture. I know that it's a duplicate equipment, that it's been, placed with newer
Right,
equipment. So what a wonderful gesture for.
so what?
The other one was provided in the same manner a few years back to Lana.
Okay,
So why don't you make a motion?
so moved.
Okay?
Yeah, that's easy.
So for Chris's benefit, I think we're basically, the board is authorizing Vika to move forward with disposal of the, whatever it's called.
Extraction.
Equipment,
Jaws.
contingent
Yeah, that's
upon
great.
receiving an email or, documentation from the fire department in terms of the equipment and that the value is less than $10,000. Because other than that, we aren't authorized.
I'll second
Okay, David, second that. Any discussion? So we're just kind of giving frankly pre-permission, but it will be contingent on that.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor? Great.
And then I have one thing to bring.
Imagine that when we go.
Can I do another?
Yes, again, under communications or other business, you're all
Out of their business. All right, yesterday, we had a car that went off the stone wharf. And, really fortunately, the outcome was pretty positive. I don't know what powers were hanging on there, but, it could have been a very serious situation. Look, we live on this island, we've lived with things that we think are okay. We have handicap parking with pieces of wood to prevent driving off the stone wharf. And in this case, that 8x8 wasn't even, like, there's no damage to the wood as that car went over.
It's in the handicapped area?
And it was a handicap spot, so
Was there water? I mean, was
it was low tide,
low tide?
but the tide was coming in.
Yeah.
Listen, is there any way that a better barrier could be placed, especially for those handicap spots for the summer? Or until, like, it really, to me, speaks again to how pressing our need is to make,
You gotta work pretty hard to jump over that.
you don't, not if you have a vehicle with big wheels and a lot of
So,
power at the end.
you're asking, are you asking?
I would ask that if this is what you're suggesting, that you take it up as an agenda item
Okay,
when it's not 9 PM at night.
thank you. Items, I'd like for it to be placed on a future agenda.
So we can do that, and so the next meeting is June 3rd.
Yeah.
I would say it would be really helpful to us if you just put together a short memo.
Yeah.
About what it is, sort of the incident, generally, here's this incident, I'm concerned, here's what I'm recommending, so that it's in the packet and that doesn't, so Vika doesn't have to come up with that. So if
I
you-
will do it.
yeah, it doesn't have to be a big thing, and if, so I think putting that in there would be helpful.
Thank you.
All right, I think we can call, so we need to approve the minutes from May 5th, 2026.
So moved.
Second.
Second from David, moved by Eliza Jane, all in favor, all right. And we have 2 more meetings, I think, before we move into the new fiscal year. We have some things happening, so we will have the fire chief's coming to the next meeting with some information he wants to give us. Then the last meeting, I don't know if we determine which meeting, but one of the things we wanna do, Ika and I have talked about, is sort of reviewing, where all the committees are at. They sent us their reports, we should read them again and discuss if the board wants to provide any instructions to the committees in the new fiscal year. Which I do think we may, and sort of like what are the board's priorities that we'd like to send to the committees? They may have some other things, but remember, the committees report to the board, so it's up to us to kind of monitor and make sure that they're doing the things that we need them to do. And for example, we talked about something tonight, like we might ask the facilities committee to hear from Addison, that kind of thing. All right, so I think so let me know if there's anything else you want to put on a future agenda, and we have 2 before we end up in the new fiscal year. Other than that, let's adjourn. Okay,
I can't do it much longer.
I have a motion to adjourn.
So.
I got David and Richard on.
I second.
Yeah, somehow I mean, in a way, it was nice to have our fellows have an opportunity to really explain what